here. Thanks, Tyson. All right. With that, I do think we will get started. Is everyone ready? Great.
Ready.
Thank you. I call the December 10th, 2020 Peninsula School District Board of Directors regular business meeting to order. Tyson, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God,
Under God.
under
indivisible,
God,
with liberty and
with
justice
liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
Thank you, Tyson, and all. Good evening. On March 24th, 2020, due to the Washington State of Emergency Declaration, the leadership of Washington's legislature issued statutory waivers and suspensions related to the Open Public Meeting Act and the Public Records Act. The waivers and suspensions have been extended multiple times, most recently extending these waivers and suspensions through January 19th, 2021. Per Proclamation 20-28.14, the Peninsula School District Board of Directors is prohibited from conducting meetings in person. Therefore, the meeting will be held virtually. Prior notice has been given to the community regarding how to watch this meeting live stream online and how to listen to the meeting through the telephone. Instructions were also provided on how to provide public comment to the board. The meeting has been reviewed and we deem all items on the agenda to be routine and necessary. With regard to routine matters, board members have reviewed the agenda and we have had the opportunity to clarify questions with the superintendent prior to the board meeting. Such matters are often processed without additional comment or debate. With that, are there any changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, David, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
It has been moved by David and seconded by Chuck to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion is carried and the agenda is approved. And here we go. Okay. In accordance to Board Policy 1210, Annual Organizational Meeting Election of Officers, the board annually elects a board president and vice president. This action is to take place the first regular board meeting in December. The role of the board president includes working with the superintendent to set the agenda for the meetings and conduct and keep order in board meetings. The vice president presides over board meetings in the absence of the president. Outside of these actions, all 5 board members have equal board member responsibilities and voting rights. One of the reasons we appoint these roles annually is to help share the workload and not to overburden individuals for an extended duration. As suggested at last December's board meeting, our board will consider using a rotation schedule for appointment to equally share this responsibility. The president would serve for at least 1 year and the vice president would be next in line for the role for the future year. I have had the pleasure of serving as board president for the past 2 years, and I thank the board for allowing me this opportunity. I also recognize David Olson for his service as board vice president for the past 2 years. With that, and in accordance to Board Policy 1210, we will now hold elections for president and vice president positions for the board. Those elected will serve in these roles for 1 year. We will be taking a roll call vote for each position. I now call nominations for board president.
I nominate David Olson for board president.
Okay.
I'll second that, if it needs a second.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Chuck. And I call nominations for board president. I think I have to do that twice. and actually a third time as well. I now call nominations for board president. Okay. We have it has been moved by Lori and seconded by Chuck to elect David Olson to be board president. I will be taking a roll call vote for this motion. Lori Glover,
Yes.
David Olson,
Yes.
Natalie Wimberly,
Yes.
Chuck West,
Aye.
Deb Krishadasan, aye.
Thank
So
you, Deb.
congratulations to David Olson. I know our board will continue to work together to best serve our students and staff. With that, I turn it over to President Olson.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the vote of confidence and electing me as your new board president. And I'll do my very best to fill the great big shoes, that Chris Dawson has had over the past couple of years. I think it goes without saying that the school board appreciates everything that Deborah Dawson has done as president the past 2 years. And I think it's easy to say that we all appreciate it in the board and the district and the community. But, those are just words, and a week from now, it'll be gone. So we thought that we might do something a little bit more permanent to recognize Deborah. So Art, I've asked Dr. Jarvis to read something on our behalf.
Thank you, President Olson. Resolution of recognition and appreciation. Whereas Deborah Dawson has served with distinction as a member of the Board of Directors of the Peninsula School District since December 2015. And whereas Deborah Dawson agreed to serve as president of the board beginning December 2018. And whereas President Dawson has displayed outstanding leadership during very crucial times for these 2 years. And whereas President Dawson has demonstrated outstanding commitment to serve the students, families, staff, and community in the Peninsula School District. And whereas President Dawson played a major role in the successful capital bond campaign that allowed the district to finally proceed with much needed improvements and was instrumental in the decisions leading to successful construction of 4 new elementary schools and 2 middle school modernizations. And whereas President Dawson modeled courage and exceptional leadership during a global pandemic and the unfathomable burdens placed upon the staff, students, families, and community. And whereas under her leadership, the Peninsula School District's Board of Directors is beginning a new process to rotate the position of president to include all board members. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Peninsula School District take official recognition of past President Deborah Dawson's valuable and devoted service and extend to her the statement of appreciation for her superb contributions to the district. And be it further resolved that this statement of appreciation be appropriately inscribed and conveyed to Deborah Dawson with a copy to be included in the official minutes of the December 10th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Directors by the Peninsula School District, Board of Directors, and staff. Thank you, past President Dawson.
Woo!
Thank you, you guys. No surprises. Thank you very much. It has been my honor to serve you all and the students and our community, and I'll continue to in this role. This is beautiful. Thank you very much. Whew.
Thank you. There's no way I could have read that. So I'm glad Art doing
Thank
it.
you, Dr. Jarvis. Thank you.
So with that, we'd like to call for nominations for board vice president. So I will call for first nominations for school board vice president.
I would like to nominate Lori Glover to serve as the vice president of our school board.
I would like to second that.
Okay, I call for nominations for board vice president. And once again, I call for nominations for a board vice president. Okay, nominations are now closed. Lori Glover has been nominated for board vice president, and we'll take roll call vote. We'll go with Natalie Wimberly,
Aye.
Deborah Kristen Dawson,
Aye.
Chuck West,
Aye.
David Olson, aye, and Lori Glover.
Aye.
Welcome, Lori Glover, to the vice president of the school board.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll now move to Dr. Jarvis' superintendent report. You have it, Dr. Jarvis?
Thank you, President Olson. My first item I would like to comment on is from the superintendent to say another thank you to the past president. As you well know, I've been a superintendent 33 years. That means I've worked with a lot of boards, a lot of presidents, and Deb Krishna Dawson has just done perhaps the most outstanding job I've ever seen in those 33 years. So my deepest appreciation, Deb, as you step off, and I get to say thank you. And I'm grateful that you're still on the board, so I don't have to say goodbye.
Thank you. Thank
I would
you.
also like to thank David and Lori for stepping up and agreeing to lead the board. I guess I have made the comment in a number of places and to a number of people that right now is not the time where school boards in your volunteer role are necessarily the most esteemed people on the face of the earth. And difficult decisions, difficult conflicting interests in community. And so David and Lori, as you step forth into this, as a superintendent, my deepest appreciation for your willingness to offer that leadership, and I say thank you. I have two items I'd like to share with the board in my superintendent report, one of which is a note, as I think everybody knows, we are nearing completion of Pioneer Elementary School. I would remind anyone who cared to know that this would have been the springtime we called for bids on elementary school number 10, and instead we're taking possession and occupancy of that school. And so I highlight that and thank Stephanie Strader as she and the Pioneer staff are preparing for that next step. There's always somewhat hazardous world that we live in of we have to get a certificate of occupancy before anybody can officially move in. And that can sometimes be day to day, and it puts people on pins and needles. But where to be at that point is just very exciting. To know that it's been a long, long time in the Peninsula School District since we've added a facility in a school is just incredibly wonderful. And I just swell with pride with all of you and the work that's been done. But that also leads to comment on a second. I'm not going to talk on each of the projects because you'll hear a report later, but we also have ES9. And ES9, as we've joked about before, is going to get to be pretty friendly. If we keep calling it ES9, we'll think that's its proper name. But right now, part of the problem in naming it is that we don't have a constituency for that school. We have not yet done the boundary for what forms ES9. So I'd like to spend just a minute or two describing the process mainly for the public. I've invited the board to identify candidates who would be interested, parents serving on a 25-person committee. We have multiple renderings of possible boundary changes that could be made as we identify the boundaries for ES9. And then as a result of that boundary carved out of some of the turf that otherwise would have had children from Purdy and Discovery and other places, it becomes necessary to reboundary the other elementary schools so that the schools are balanced and all properly used. And that's a process that is sometimes just fraught with heartfelt emotion. what will be the new boundary in place of a boundary that's been there for quite some time? If my home gets moved, what happens to my children? And what if I've got somebody just leaving and somebody just coming in? So I mentioned that in appreciation to those who will serve. The first half of January, we're going to try to have a process for that committee to review the boundary maps that we've prepared, multiple variations, give us feedback, and then come back to the board with the recommendation and the options for you as a board to declare the formal boundaries that will exist for the elementary schools. And while we do that, to have those entry schools feed one single middle school will require some boundary changes for the middle school. So I just wanted to outline that process for the public to know that that's happening. A gentleman out there by the name of David Brooks, the principal of ES9, is waiting with bated breath as soon as he gets a constituency and he knows which children are slated to attend next fall on ES9 in that brand new school also added to the system. Then Mr. Brooks will lead the process from there for the naming of the school and coming back to the board with possible names and recommendations. But first we have to get the children who would attend and the families that would know they're part of ES9. So I mentioned that mostly for the benefit of the community and the fact that you'll be watching this process unfold virtually by the time we meet next as a board. I'll be happy to answer any questions on that, but I also have then a third topic, and I'd like to read a statement. This is the last board meeting of 2020. And as such, my statement starts, "Goodbye 2020." A phrase often heard in recent weeks. This year has been a tremendous challenge for so many families, businesses, and individuals. From a school vantage point, there has certainly been no other like it. Schools closed on March 13th, and now in December 2020, many students have yet to return to their schools. Classes, graduations, athletics, dances, events of all types are missing. Particularly painful to the participants, the students are missing from the schools. But we have also learned teachers have worked diligently to find best methods to teach remotely. Food service staff have provided thousands and thousands of meals to children. Tech departments have scrambled to provide devices and hotspots. Parents and students have found ways to set up school at home. Terms like PPE have become a permanent addition to our lexicon. "You are muted" is a phrase added to many vocabularies. Perhaps more than anything, the pandemic of 2020 taught us much about a school system we all took for granted. Academics are at the heart of the schools, and the challenges to transfer the academic world to a virtual remote system was more complex than any of us ever imagined. We saw clear evidence of a necessity for students to develop self-discipline and organizational skills when teachers were more removed from the process. We saw what happens when the relationships between teachers and students is impaired by distance. In those circumstances, we also see evidence of higher failure rate. Some children do not prosper as much as others. Early in the year, the district identified a goal to develop a dual system of remote and in-person learning. That goal was not achieved initially when, at the direction of the health department, the school year opened fully remote. Shortly thereafter, Peninsula was able to begin in-person learning for our youngest children in kindergarten and first grade. Plans to add second grade children to the K-1 service has been in place, but is stalled by a wave of positive cases throughout Pierce County. Participation in a pilot testing program has provided additional evidence that countermeasures can be taken in the schools to safely and effectively serve students in person. We still need the dual platform for our kids. In particular, now we have seen that gathering children in schools does not contribute to the widespread viral. While school staff and school children are more or no less protected from the spread of the virus in school than those out of school. The evolution of specific hybrid methods of instruction provide the next step in our goal to enable the partial return of students in person. We will be continuing to engage staff in the development of the options for hybrids, as well as updating our indication of interest from parents and students. Yes, goodbye 2020. Almost 10 months after the March closure, we believe we can see the shape of 2021. We are directing our efforts to be in the position where second grade children join K1, where grade 3-5 children return in hybrid, and grade 6-12 students find partial reentry in a hybrid designed for them. Athletics, drama, music, forensics, and similar activities have hopes of returning together with the teachers and the students in the classrooms. Many details remain, but 2021 brings us that spirit. Thanks to so many of you who have been so patient, but have waited anxiously for this next step. Hello, 2021. You are so welcome. We have hope. And I thank you for my last superintendent report to the board in 2020. Thank you, President Olson.
Thank you, Dr. Jarvis. It's now time for our student representatives to give their comments. I think Connor might have gone first last time, so we'll start with Tyson this time.
Hello, everyone. It's kind of the same at Peninsula. Everyone is waiting for the new year to come by, hoping that 2021 will be a lot better than 2020. We're all still hopeful. Peninsula just completed its toy drive that started on November 30th, and they had a toy drive for the last 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure. At least 2 weeks. And so we collected a bunch of toys that we will be donating to the local fish food bank. And we got a lot, and the toys were mainly, it wasn't really it's called a toy drive, but we were targeting the teenage groups more than the younger groups, because teenage kids need a lot more right now than the younger kids really do. So we got a bunch of stuff like shampoo, just items that teenagers would want and would be able to use on a daily basis. And we were able to get a lot of donations and donate those to the fish food bank. So that's very exciting. And we are just finishing the physical year out strong, and just staying positive through it all, and hoping that 2021 will be better, and that maybe we can go back to school soon whenever it's safe for everyone. So yeah.
Thank you, Tyson. I think that's really awesome that you guys did that for the food bank, and I know they greatly appreciate that. So thank you guys for doing that. Connor?
Man, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but not a whole lot has changed at Gig Harbor as well. Still going through. Leadership has started the Make a Difference drive for the homeless community in Gig Harbor and Pierce County. It's from the 7th to the 16th. And there will be various items that you donate, like feminine products, cleaning supplies, stuff like that, that would be helpful to the communities that are in need of this time of year. Leadership is also working on plans for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and just basically trying to wrap up the physical year and strong, and like trying to keep our, I guess, hopes and kind of dreams, hopefully, to, strong, and trying to make it through until we're able to go back. Nothing much has changed with sports. Still people doing their allowed workouts and following the COVID protocol. Same with our school, we're all trying to do our part to make sure that we're able to make it through this troubling time. And I've personally experienced the kind of the COVID protocol that we have at our school. We have our
We lost Connor.
I think he might be back. Can't hear him.
to socially distance and do all those things. So other than that, not all that much has changed to get cardboard, but we're still trying to like work on stuff and kind of do our part.
Thanks, Connor. I think, probably for all the board members I've served with over the past 7 years, I've always been really impressed by the efforts from all three of our high schools for all you guys do for our community and as well as each other. So thank you. So now it's time for Mark Ben and Wayne Robinson from Northwest Leadership to give us an update on the superintendent search.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here, and congratulations to President Olson and Vice President Glover. It was a smooth transition there. And Deb, thanks for all your work. We were with you when you first started out, and your growth is amazing. As a board member, you really have blossomed. So way to go. So I'll lead in, and then Wayne's going to kind of take over and talk about the brochure. But we talked last time about the focus group work we did and all the responses we got from so many different groups. And again, thanks to Tanya for her work and all setting that up. She's been a huge support to all of us. We talked about the common threads and how important they were. And when we asked what were celebrations, what were the challenges, and what were the attributes that you want to see in a new soup. And hopefully you'll use those to guide, we did in guiding the brochure, but also at the end of the search, when we get together, we want to remember those common threads that we got out of our focus group work with you. So we posted your position about 3 weeks ago. It's been posted on the school director's website, the Association of School Administrators, that's the superintendent website, and then the Northwest Leadership Associates website. I can tell you we've had a lot of interest in it. We've had interest in your position from current superintendents, assistant superintendents, directors, superintendents from out of state, superintendents from in-state, and directors from out of state and in-state. So a lot of interest. So I have to tell you that we really are at the beginning phases of the search because we haven't finished the brochure yet, and hopefully that'll be accomplished tonight. Because once the brochure goes out, we can send that out to almost 3,500 people nationwide. And then Wayne and I can start our targeted search. We have about 60 people that we will target that we have on our list, and we will personally contact over 60 people, and that list grows daily as we get contacted by people. So the main push will go when we get the brochure done, and hopefully that's next week we can get that out. We want to get that out well before the holiday break and make so candidates can take a look at that before they go into their break over the Christmas holiday. So survey results. We also posted a survey on your website through the link that you have for the superintendent search. And so I have some good news and some bad news on that. So the good news is we found it today. You have 748 individual responses to the survey right now. That is unheard of, folks. That is a huge number. 748 in English and 1 in Spanish. So we have 1 person in Spanish. So that continues on until the position closes in February. The bad news is, school board, you're going to have to read all those. And so you better set aside some time to take a look at all those responses, because you've had a tremendous amount of response from your community. And I want to kudos to Amy and Tanya and all the people that have promoted that, your principals, I know they have, and all the people we met with in the focus groups, because that is huge. That's a huge response from a community the size of Peninsula School District. So when we get the brochure done, and we will, we're going to get it out to over 3,000 people, and we're looking forward to moving ahead and getting people contacted, and we know we're going to have a good response, and we'll keep you up to date. in future board meetings and as to how it's going and work with you on that. So thanks again to Tanya for all her support, and I'm going to turn this over to Wayne and he can take off from here with the brochure. Go ahead, Wayne.
Great. Thank you very much. Good to see everybody. Congratulations to the newly elected board officers, and thank you and congratulations to Deborah for your tour of duty as past board president. You guys have got a good leadership team, and you're gonna go forward and move on to the next level. We're trying to share the screen here, and I'm getting a prompt that says the host has disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't know what that means. And if you want to see the document, the board has seen the document. We've been working on it for several weeks now, and starts out as a fairly generic document.
Is that something Tanya can help with? Let you share the screen?
Brad's gonna have to do that. He's the host now. Brad's gonna have to change Wayne's permission.
I'll keep talking and I'll kind of watch it as I go. Anyway, we start out with a fairly generic document. Talks about the community and the district, and sets forth the anticipated qualifications and characteristics that are going to be that could turn out to be the ones the district is seeking. But then the board goes to work, and the board makes it a Peninsula School District document. And this board did an outstanding job of that. Board members
We booted Wayne.
Well, you guys aren't very hospitable tonight. What's going on here? So I think part of that screen sharing, they might have gotten rid of Wayne. So
He'll be back.
He'll come back, but you know what we're trying to get across tonight. We hope to be able to show you. I think you've seen it already. You should have. I think we're on our 8th draft. So certainly, what we want to do is remind you that this document is for the candidates to see. It's not necessarily for your community. It's not necessarily for you as a board. It's for the candidates to see. And you've done a really, like Wayne said, you've done a very nice job of putting this together, and we're really ready to move forward. And I'm trying to get it up with my shared screen too. So anyhow, we wanted to see if you had any questions tonight as we move forward. We made a number of changes to, not big, but just changes to as we put it together. And the document as it now exists looks really good. You should be happy with the language in the document. You should be happy with I think part of it, I think we had a connection to your Chamber of Commerce link that we have for the candidates to see. There's some really good stuff on there. And as a candidate, if you see that, you're going to be very impressed. The other thing, though, the important thing, the reason we do the brochure is because the brochure is connected to the application. When the candidates apply and the applications come to Wayne and myself, they do a writing prompt, and the writing prompt is based on the characteristics, opportunities, and that we put in the brochure. And you've kind of you've labeled them as opportunities, I believe. I don't have it in front of me right now, but you have labeled that as opportunities and characteristics and that. And the candidates will actually write to that. So when you read their applications, when you have access to them after the job closes, then they will be writing to those prompts that you put into the brochure. So they go hand in hand. So when we recruit candidates, we send them the brochure, but we also send them the application with it. So, and we tell them that the application and the brochure go together. So I guess that being said, and Wayne being either booted or on his own, maybe, I don't know. Are there any questions from the board? We didn't plan on being here too long tonight. We're kind of ready to move forward. I don't have permission to, well, wait a second. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the brochure as it exists right now. And if I knew how to scroll down with it, I could do that for you. But I've done a few of these, but I have to be able to move it up and down with that. So basically, I don't know why I can't move it, but I can maybe try to share it with another one. But certainly, it's we think it's ready to go. There we go. There we go. So you know, have opportunities for growth. Your pictures in here are really good. I think you've got kind of the district covered, but you're looking at the opportunities for growth and professional qualifications. That's what the candidates write to. That's the prompts they will write to. So if I'm writing, I put in a letter of introduction, and then my writing piece is on those things you put together there for your opportunities of growth and professional qualifications. And you've done a good job. So there are some other pictures in here, and there's some narratives in here. Talks about the district itself. It brags about the district and how your graduation rates, your number of employees. So potential applicants can go into this. They look at this. Part of it's the Peninsula Promise. Go into that you've worked with your superintendent Jarvis on. Talks about your community of Gig, located in Gig Harbor, size of your community. And one thing we will change after tonight, David and Lori, is just so you know that your names will go in there, David Olson and Lori Glover as the president and vice president. That'll change and on the final brochure. And we hope to get that out to you hopefully tomorrow or early next week, so we can get these out. So you can see there's some more photos. There's the groundbreaking at one, I assume it's one of your elementary schools, one of your students, and then the parade. What parade is that, David?
I believe that's our Gig Maritime Festival Parade.
Okay, okay. So it's a sample of the festivals and activities that go on in the community, and then the application procedures. And you can see that there's a formal letter, and then they can, if they want, if we don't contact them, they request an application from us, and then we give them the brochure. 3 to 5 letters of recommendation, and then they address the challenges and opportunities. So, and I just had a text from Wayne, and he said it won't let him in. So sorry, Wayne. So are there any questions before I go back to the full screen? I'm not hearing any.
I think the graphics are just maybe having a little issues with the program, but I know I saw this version yesterday and it hasn't changed since yesterday, has it?
No, well,
Okay.
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Not
Yeah,
since
that's-
yesterday, David.
Yeah.
I think the last
Yeah.
change we
Oh.
made was 2 days ago. Yeah.
And I would echo what you said. I think the final document, although it's been through several iterations, I think it looks really good. And I appreciate you and Wayne being patient with the board over the past few weeks as we made sure all board members' views were incorporated into the document.
Okay, well, thank you. We have a desktop publisher lady we work with, Michelle's her name, and she's really good about getting things turned around. But we're ready to move forward if you guys are. Well, I think it behooves us to get these out to the listserv and then work on our targeted recruiting before the break, and so we're hopeful to get going on it. So, and we will run this. We'll run this to you, David, with the new names on it, and you run it by the rest of the board. And if we get the approval, it's no vote, it's just a consensus. If we get consensus from the board, we'll go ahead and get it on your website, but we'll also get it out to over 3,000 people across the country.
Anybody have any questions for Mark?
No, I assume that did get the change that we requested. They live in the district.
Yeah, that's one of that bullets.
Okay, I didn't see that
I
on
don't know
that
if you saw
copy.
it. Yeah, it's there. I mean, I thought you might ask me, will that make a difference in our pool? I think as long as the board is flexible about a person moving in the district, I got a call from a person out of state the other day that was maybe concerned about moving in and selling their house in another state and moving in. I told them I thought the board would be flexible as long as it's their intention was to move into the district and live in the district.
Yeah, yeah. So it would be, within 6 months of employment or something like that.
Yeah, and it might even, Chuck, it might even be a year. I mean, sometimes it takes a while, depending on where you
Sure.
live in the United States or where you live. If you live in Eastern Washington, it might take a lot longer to sell a house than it does in Gig Harbor. I can guarantee you that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right
Anybody
in.
else?
I think it's the second bullet, isn't it? I don't have it in front of me now.
It's
It is
in
the
there.
it is the second bullet, and Chuck, it is on the version 8, the last version that we received. So it should all be in
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks really good. And thanks for your help, Deb, with it and putting it together too. And so, David, if we'll get that to you tomorrow, and then hopefully we can move forward. That would be our goal. And then we'll continue to give you updates as we go ahead with this, probably after the first of the year. So on behalf of Wayne and myself, we want to wish you a happy new year and happy holidays, and also echo what Art was saying about the good riddance to 2020 and welcoming 2021. We're optimistic. So, and you, hopefully you should be too. I think you will be. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
I'll
Mark.
check out
Appreciate
then.
it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
give Wayne our best.
I will. Thanks.
So next up, we have comments from the community, and if I'm correct, Tanya, we have one person scheduled to speak, Parker Wright.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so if Parker's available. Welcome, Parker. You're on mute.
David, he may have not heard you because he was getting online.
Okay, Parker, if you're there, you're on mute. There we go. Hello, Parker. Parker Wright. Tanya, is he going to be joining us?
No,
There we go. Hello, Parker.
message that I'm not ready to speak.
Looks like he's trying to talk. Parker Wright. How long do we want to wait, Art? Parker Wright, are you there?
I will
What do you want
work
to do,
with,
Art?
I'll work with Tanya.
Okay. Okay, if you want, Tanya, if you could tell Parker, maybe we could have Melissa do her district report, and if he's connected, we could have Parker speak in between your Melissa's report and Dan and John's report.
I will talk to Tanya.
Okay, so how about we just move forward with district report, Melissa Wiesner, Department of Learning and Innovation.
Good morning, or good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a COVID year. Good evening, members of the board and all of our participants and audience. Department of Learning and Innovation has prepared a report for all of you, and I would ask, thank you, James. James Cantonwine will be talking to you about some different assessments that have occurred, as well as a very brief touch base with you on our second read of the K-5 STEM adoption. And then I have a little bit of information for you at the end. So Ashley Ortenzo is here to answer any questions that you might have. Remember that Ashley gave a very detailed and in-depth report last week or last month on this. And it was in-depth because it has been a few years since we had a major curriculum adoption, and we have revamped the systems and the support that goes with that. And we really wanted you to understand how things have changed, and of course to always be transparent with you because we do have some adoptions coming up. All right.
Thank you, Melissa.
Of course. Thank you, Ashley, for your time this evening.
Yeah, so one of the major pieces you asked about during the last meeting was some more direct feedback from students. So I pulled some quotes from the feedback that students completed themselves while participating in the pilot, and I've also brought a few examples of student work from pilot learning activities. So these quotes here are from students of various ages from kindergarten on up. I tried to get a nice span, and these were, while these are quotes a little edited for clarity and spelling and such, because you know we have a second grader filling out their own form. But the ideas were repeated by other students. So these are very indicative of a lot of the feedback that came back from students. These are just some kind of key examples. Teamwork, hands-on work, building stuff, dissecting plants. There was a life cycle song included in one of the units that got mentioned more than once. And I know we had a brief discussion about involving the arts in our science instruction. So I thought that was a really nice example of that. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is an example. The yellow squares are me protecting student identity of a investigation that hinges on a local phenomena. So it's not just students looking at random data from Topeka, Kansas. Students are actually looking at real data from their local community to start learning those processes of data collection and data analysis. And this lesson is specific around the length of day and night. This is from a unit around seasonal patterns and what patterns do we see as the seasons shift and cause and effect. So you can see here also a really strong math integration with the graphing skills and the quantitative data that was included in the work. And then you can also see the beginning steps of students developing that claim evidence reasoning, thinking pattern, and writing skills. This claim evidence reasoning writing is one of the key things that middle school teachers feel like they need their students to come in with stronger skills on. So I think it's a really nice example of how this curriculum supports our students developing those skills they need as they move towards middle school. We can go to the next slide. I'm trying to keep this super brief. So yet another, so that the previous slide was from a first grade lesson. This big chunk of writing here is now a third grader. So it gives you a really nice perspective of how we start out with a small piece of writing, some structures and support in the learning. And as students grow through the years, they can really get to the point where they can develop some really rich pieces of writing and text. And we're incorporating that writing instruction in with the science instruction. We're not taking time away from other important subjects. We are incorporating and integrating all those subject areas. And then another piece of student artwork here, and I chose this one because you can see the sticky note on it, which I think was a really nice example of some of the strategies that teachers use to help students analyze their own work and to provide constructive feedback to their peers on their work. What do you notice about their drawing? What did you like about it? What question do you have for your peer from their work? So those are the student-centered feedback pieces that you had asked for, and I'm happy to answer any other existing questions that you still have.
Anybody?
Ashley or Melissa, I have a question. Not necessarily on the curriculum that we're adopting, but just more about science in our K-5 programs. This curriculum is used by science specialists, or is it in the gen ed class itself?
So that's been one of our challenges, is that if you look at the scope of the next generation science standards, just having science as a specialist 40 minutes a week, that's not enough opportunity for our students to develop the skills and knowledge they need to be successful with the next generation science standards. So the adoption of this is intended to be used by every classroom teacher to increase that opportunity for all of our students to have a in-depth science experience throughout their K-5 experience, and also to help because different buildings have different numbers of minutes for specialists in different situations. We really want to increase the equity when it comes to science access for our students so that every kid in every building is getting access to a quality science curriculum. Our STEM specialists have been doing an amazing job carrying that load, but that's not a load that they can carry on their own. And we need to support classroom teachers in doing their part.
Okay. Appreciate that, because I do think that's something that science is something kids can really get excited about. And I think it needs to be more than just 40 minutes a week. It needs to be a part of all of our discussions during the classroom. And I appreciate you giving the support to the teachers as well then, so that they are familiar and are able to work with the curriculum as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ashley. James.
A question I have around that real quick would be, and if this was asked previously in November, I apologize. I know that it was a pilot and you're selecting this as your next science or STEM curriculum, but how many of the classrooms percentage-wise are using it? Is it still in pilot phase, or are all of them using this now?
No one's using it yet because we are waiting for your approval.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't pilot. And so if we approve it and go forward, I think it'd be great if board members could, if they're so inclined, to pop in and observe some of this instruction just to see how it's going. So I know I would like to.
And I would certainly welcome board members, if you're interested in being a part of the implementation planning work, you're welcome to come to any of those meetings too.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. Here to talk to you about something perhaps less exciting than new science materials, and really kind of what are we seeing in terms of our some of our fall assessment data. So I've got just a really quick summary for you. And so one thing I think is that we all heard in the news, a number of research agencies out there, universities, publications out there, really predicting that we'd see significant decreases in reading and math proficiency rates for this year. And somewhat surprisingly, that's not quite what we're seeing. We're seeing a much more complicated situation. That's true nationwide, and I think the situation at Peninsula is fairly unique in terms of what we're seeing. So we are seeing decreased oral reading fluency rates. So when we measure students and particularly our younger students and how fluently and accurately they're able to read things out loud, we are seeing a decrease in that, in their skills there, particularly at younger grades, especially first. On the other hand, when we measure overall reading proficiency, we've actually seen that that's increased. So fluency is one important aspect of reading proficiency, but comprehension, knowledge of vocabulary, decoding, these are other important parts as well. And on balance, we're actually seeing an improvement relative to previous years in terms of the fall story. District-wide in math, I could tell you that things are looking about the same as they have in previous years, but that would really hide some interesting shifts that we're seeing, where we're seeing some grade levels are doing better than they have in previous years in the fall, and some grade levels are not doing as well. And so we'll take a quick look at some of those pieces. So again, these are all comparing fall to fall proficiency rates. And this particular measure, iReady, is holding students to the end of year expectations throughout the year. So we expect to see lower proficiency rates in the fall because it's really holding them to the end of year expectation for their current grade level. And what we really see with the exception of fourth grade is an increase in proficiency rate at all of our other grades. Fourth grade is fairly flat. And so it's really interesting. It's not at all what we were expecting to see at this point. We're also seeing that, unlike kind of our nationwide trends, while we are testing fewer students because we have fewer students enrolled, our participation rate in these assessments is really the same as it was before. We're at a 96% participation rate on our oral reading fluency measures, a 91% on this particular iReady reading diagnostic, and a 92% participation rate on our iReady math diagnostic. So speaking of that math diagnostic, this is where district-wide, we actually see that, again, this averages out to be fairly consistent with previous years, but we see something more interesting when we really break it out by grade level, like I've done here. Our younger students are coming in this fall with higher levels of proficiency than what we typically see in the fall. And whereas our fourth and fifth grade students are coming in and they're struggling more than what we would typically see in a fall. So this has been very interesting for us. This is, again, not what we were expecting to see in terms of those results, a much more nuanced picture. And I think it really says something about the work that our teachers have put in over the course of the spring and the work that our families have done supporting learning at home during this time. So a few pieces on our next steps. We know from really decades of research, both sort of within our state and nationwide, that grade level instruction towards those grade level standards is really the most important thing that we can do to help students learn long term. And so that remains the focus of classroom instruction, is really teaching those grade level standards. And then our intervention work is based on this data. So when we do find students who are struggling, who are not having difficulty accessing the material, then we're looking at where are they having those gaps, and we're using these tools to both identify the students and their specific needs. A few other data related pieces here, social emotional survey data. Students participate in panorama surveys, just like they did last year in November. They did that this year. That data just went to principals on Tuesday. I'll give you a spoiler. We're going to see some great news there, and we're going to see some, I think, expected struggles from students too, when we get to kind of sharing that in a broader audience. Our winter testing windows for iReady and the DIBELS, that oral reading fluency measure, those are coming up in January. And I think this is going to be really telling as we look at the work that we've done with both in-person learning and remote learning, and how is student growth coming along. Because it's one thing to identify where students are, and it's another and more important thing to identify what's the amount of learning that they've been able to do so far. And then again, just ongoing professional learning for teachers and how to use these assessment results. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any about the data here.
Anyone?
I have
David,
a question.
does someone else have comment? Sorry.
Go ahead.
James, I'll have a couple questions. So this assessment information, is it just K through 5 or is this district wide?
So we do also use these same measures at middle school as well. I didn't give you charts of that because the middle school data is rather boring. It's all quite flat. What we're seeing this year is the same as what we saw the year before, and it's the same as what we saw the year before that.
Okay, so it's just K through 5. The drop in math for 4th and 5th is a significant drop. Do you
Yes.
attribute that to kind of the loss of the spring with these kids, or what are you attributing that to? Because it's a bit concerning to see that.
Absolutely. I think it's hard. It would be difficult to claim that that wasn't a factor. On the other hand, this is actually the second year in a row that we've seen that decline. And I think that's an important point as well. Is it that 2018-19 was just an especially great year because that is really our high point, or is something different happening in these most recent 2 years?
Yeah. Is the trend for 1 through 3 as is that the same as last year as well, or the year before?
In grades 1 through 3, actually, in first grade we had dropped a bit in terms of that fall proficiency, and same in 1 and 3, and then in second grade we've kind of been trending up for the last couple of years.
Okay.
In the fall.
Okay, and so with the 2-year drop, then with 4 through 5, was hoping that the 1 through 3 success would roll over into 4 to 5. But what are we doing then to address that drop if it's a multiple year drop?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we're looking at is we're kind of building out that multi-tiered system of supports that you've heard us talk a lot about, the MTSS. Last year, the focus district-wide was really on behavior and social emotional learning. This year, we're going to have we have some legislation on the books from the state that necessitates us to do some work on literacy. And I think that's giving us an opportunity to figure out maybe what's really going on in math. I know I'm really interested to see what happens in January. One thing that we see, I'd say nationwide, it's less evident in most years here in Peninsula. Nationwide, we sometimes see that when students are tested at the very beginning of the year, we get an artificially low number from them in terms of their score. And sometimes that's because they're just not really ready in the school mode. And if we had just waited 1 more week, the students will acclimate and a little bit further and score higher. I think that's possibly a factor here. And so really seeing that January data and seeing what's the growth then for students as we've been going through our current remote learning model. And that's going to be really telling.
That's interesting. I always see my kids panic at the end of summer because they forgot how to do long division or something, and then they get it right back. So, James, thank you. Your information is always very valuable. So appreciate you breaking that down for us.
You're welcome.
Natalie?
My questions were just kind of on the same, just about the math as well. And I guess you would have answered it if there was a clear answer. I was going to ask if we changed a curriculum or changed a delivery or anything between the 2017, 2018 year that would lead to that sharp decline over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, we don't have anything that's real obvious that we can point to, except, in the last year, of course, the pandemic.
Right. Thank you.
Lori?
James, I'm sorry, you probably said, when did you say the social emotional survey was done? Is it done in the spring?
So no, it was actually done in November, really within the same timeline as our survey last year, which kind of gives us the closest to an apples to apples comparison that you can have in a pre-pandemic year and a pandemic year.
Interesting.
Yeah, in both cases, we wrapped up the survey window shortly before the Thanksgiving holiday.
Okay, thank you. I'll be interesting.
Chuck, do you have anything? So he chimed, anything,
No.
Chuck?
No, I don't. You guys
Okay.
have covered everything.
One thing, James, I know a couple years ago when we were looking into the impact that preschool had on kindergarten kids versus those that didn't have preschool, it sort of caught up. And if I'm correct, Melissa, I think they catch up with each other around third grade. With the lack of oral competency, because maybe they're not reading out loud in school, but their reading skills are improving. Do you have any idea how long it would take for them if their reading comprehension is actually improving, but their oral is decreasing just because they're not reading out loud as much? Do you expect them to catch up, sort of like what happens with preschool kids getting caught up by non-preschool kids? If you can speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely, we do. One thing that I'm personally really interested to see is for students that were participating in our oral reading fluency assessments, that was right around the time that we were bringing first grade students back into the classroom. So some of our students would have been assessed through Zoom in oral reading, at just picking first grade as one example, and some of them would have been assessed in the classroom. That also would have been students' first experience being assessed in that way, because it's not an assessment that we were using last spring as we typically would have due to the closure. And so I think we may be seeing some artificially low scores there just because students are unfamiliar with the format, and that doing reading fluency over Zoom is an extra unnatural act. You know, I'll be honest, I think that's it's optimistic of me to think that. We don't know for sure because we don't have great data on what those effects might be.
David, I have one more question. Sorry, James, you did reference our middle school assessments and data, and you said it's boring, but what does boring look like? Is it low boring, high boring? Is it an area, if we're seeing our fourth and fifth kind of decline, is that feeding over into our middle schools and our scores are lower there as well?
So broadly speaking, when we look at our kind of peer districts nationwide, we see that at middle school, Peninsula is a fairly both high proficiency district and a fairly high growth district, which is great. That's where you want to be, kids learning quickly and being proficient at the same time. One thing that we do see, and that's very typical, we see that sixth grade scores, especially in the fall, are very low. It's very common in districts that have a middle school model like we do. Districts that use a junior high model tend to see that big drop in the seventh grade. Again, as students kind of acclimate to a totally different model when they show up. So we do see this drop in sixth grade that then students pretty quickly recover from in seventh.
Okay, and that's with math and reading both?
That's actually almost entirely with math.
Okay.
With reading, we see it's very steady.
Okay. I know it was very interesting a couple of years ago, while the standards were kind of pushed down in the grades, we also were aggressive with putting our kids up and accelerating them into algebra and geometry. So they were getting those in middle school, and then they were taking the 8th grade test and not doing well on it because they weren't doing 8th grade math. They were doing 9th grade math, 10th grade math. Right. So I think we've gotten better about not accelerating so many kids when they really need to be getting that math standards that were pushed down already. So it'll be interesting to see the data in the next year or two.
Absolutely.
One more question, if I could. Just a clarification, the Panorama survey is not the same thing as the Healthy Youth survey. That's correct? That's
correct. So the Panorama survey is actually it's two surveys that we use through our partner in Panorama. So one of them is an anonymous climate survey, and it's really asking students about their sense of belonging, their feeling of safety with the school. And then we also ask students, and it's really a self-assessment of their own social emotional learning competencies. And this is tied to our state standards. And so we're asking them questions that get at their students' perception of their own growth mindset, their feelings of self-efficacy. Do they feel like they can do the work that they're assigned? And so we're asking them those questions tied to standards. The Healthy Youth Survey comes from the state, and that due to our unusual circumstances this year, that survey has been canceled.
Okay. Thanks.
So that prompted me to ask one more question. I know that some of the students that aren't used to doing remote learning have been struggling with this. And I know this is above the younger kids that we're talking about, but how are the students that typically attend the PIA, the Internet Academy, how are they being impacted? If they are used to doing online learning, how have they been impacted by remote learning, if at all?
I can't give you a great answer on that because we don't use this type of assessment with those students. These types of assessments they're not well supported with high school students really, kind of overall. So I'll probably have to defer to the folks at PIA to give a more accurate answer to that, and we can follow up on that.
Okay, appreciate that.
All right, thank you, James. All right, I'll be brief. I just wanted to give you an update on comprehensive sexual health education, and we'll continue to do our annual updates this year and some revisions as needed. I do not anticipate any large scale changes at all. We seem to be right on track, but I can always provide more information to you if you would like that in the future. But for right now, everything is where it needs to be, and for all practical purposes will remain the same. Any questions on that?
What could you elaborate on for all practical purposes? Are we keeping everything the same, or is it going to change?
We have an additional bit of work to do at the middle school, and we've already started talking about that, at least in my department. And then I've let middle school health and PE teachers know, and they know, and they're asking for some different support. It's been a while since we had major changes to their like so many of our groups, their curriculum and programming. So we'll continue to work with them. At the high school, we're good. At the elementary, I don't anticipate any huge changes. So, and elementary is not impacted by this work until the school year 21-22. So it was staged out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Excellent. Okay, next slide, please. All right. I am just so excited. I've been working with our incredible music teachers in the district, and I'm very excited to let you know that we are planning for a virtual student performance sometime likely in February. We don't have a date set yet. And you know that we have a high quality music program that is well known throughout the district, throughout the state, throughout the Northwest. And I've been working with ARC to find ways that we can bring snippets of student performance to you, because at the secondary level especially, performance is such a large part of being in band and in being in choir. So be looking for that to be added as we move into the January board meeting. But I wanted to give you, and some of you may have seen this, but you know, what we miss most of all is our kids, as our students. And anytime that we can have, we can see them perform, and if it's virtual, I'll take it, right? So this was shared with me, and I wanted to share it with all of you in case you hadn't had a chance to see it. And this comes from Megan Webster. So, James. All right. So yeah, I have goosebumps because it's just so thrilling to see our students performing and their passion. And we'll continue to make short, brief opportunities like this available to you and of course to everyone who's viewing. And if you have any ideas around that, please don't hesitate to let me know. And I'm really, really looking forward to our virtual spring performance. It's going to be fabulous. So thank you for your time this evening. Any questions you have for me?
Not a question,
Anybody
just
else?
thanks for bringing that to us. That was amazing. That's exactly what we needed to see.
Exactly right. You know, after Art's message to us about 2020, you know, we want to end on a high note. And the way that we do that is when we celebrate all the accomplishments of our fabulous students and our teachers who are working so hard to make that happen. That looked really professional to me.
Megan
Well, thank you.
Megan Webster is just amazing. And so please thank her for bringing that to us.
I will. We've got some exciting performances coming up for you. I'm just really, really thrilled at all of the music teachers and their creativity and the desire to let their students' light shine for you.
Thank you, Melissa, James, and Ashley. We appreciate all the hard work you're doing for our school district and community. So very, very much appreciated.
Thanks for all your support.
You're very welcome. So now we'll move on to Assistant Superintendent Gregory and Helwich.
So thank you. So
Thank you. I think
after
John's going to start us off here. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I get to follow the kids by talking about antigen testing. So maybe we should have got the order a little different tonight. I'm just gonna put in a little plug. I have twins that are juniors at Gerber High School, and I can say also that Mr. Eric Swanson's band is going strong, that my daughter is working on one-act plays, and so the arts are strong at both of our high schools, and great credit to our arts teachers at those schools. I'm going to quickly review the purpose of our testing program, just to remind you that this is just one leg of the stool for keeping our schools safe for in-person learning. It's not a be-all and end-all. It's a way to help us understand how much virus is in our schools, and I'm going to go over those numbers in just a few minutes. It helps us isolate those who test positive and their close contacts before they can transmit the virus. And it just goes along with those other measures, the face coverings, the distancing, the disinfecting and sanitizing, the health checks. All of those things are critical for keeping our schools safe. And this just adds one more piece to it. And again, for those that maybe weren't with us for our previous one, this is grant funded by the county, and they are paying for the tests and all of the crews that are coming into our schools. And it's a lot. It's about 60 people who are coming into our mostly our gyms to test our youngest students and our other people that are other students that are on campus and our staff that are on campus. So Dan, you want to go ahead and flick that back up there?
Certainly. There you go.
Thank you. So we have some numbers to share from you from the first week and 3/5 that we've gone through so far, just past the halfway point. In our first week, we saw roughly about 1,000 tests given, 570 students, 435 staff tested in our first week. One of the things we were looking for is we wanted this to kind of pick up momentum over the 3 weeks because we knew we were coming out off of Thanksgiving break. Some students might have forgotten their consent forms or parents didn't give them to them. And maybe there's just nervousness about this program. And so once they had a chance to maybe talk with other people in their neighborhood, they said, oh, this isn't so bad. And we would hope to see the number of tests increase. We want as high a percentage as we can get. So in that first week, we had 56% of our students test, and we had 83% of our staff test. We had a pretty big range at the elementaries from 39 to 73. And one of the things, if you look down to week 2, you'll notice that range is narrowed down to 53 to 78, and that the percent that are testing has increased by 11%. So Last week, we had 56%. So far this week, 67% of our students are testing. And the staff testing percentage stayed about the same, 83 down to 82, but pretty much the same. We still have some more testing to go on tomorrow, where we have a lot of our secondary students testing at KPMS and Peninsula High School and at Gig Harbor High School. Thank you, Dan. So we've had a total of about 2,300 tests that have been given so far, and we've had 5 positives, which is a pretty low rate. Now, these are all asymptomatic people, but that's one of the purposes, is to make sure that there's not a fear that there are a lot of people who are asymptomatically carrying this virus around our schools, and that it's not spreading. To our knowledge, we haven't had any of these 5 cases that we believe contracted the virus while on campus. So that's another piece to the puzzle. Dan, you want to talk about some of the adjustments?
Certainly. Thank you, John. And as we get started, I know it's been said several times already, but congratulations to President Olson and to Vice President Glover. And thank you for taking the leadership. And again, also on my behalf and John and others at the district office, we also want to express our great appreciation to past President Krishna Dasan, and your leadership over your time as president, and even prior to that has just been fabulous. So thank you again on behalf of those of us at the district office. We're very appreciative, and David and Lori, congratulations. As John indicated, we were very pleased with the first week, but we're not satisfied. We want to continue to see those percentages increase. The other thing that came to the surface is when we reviewed week 1 with the health department, we understand that there is actually capacity to test more individuals. Within the schedules that were created, there is room and time available to increase the number of participants. So what we did is we noticed where there might be some gaps, and how do we go back and pick up some of those gaps. Our testing occurs at all 9 elementary schools, at both of our comprehensive high schools on Friday, and at KPMS on Friday. We're missing some middle schools there. And so we wanted to take advantage of that capacity and serve some of those middle school students and staff. And so what we did is we looked at the Harbor Heights testing schedule at Harbor Heights Elementary, and that was a place where there was capacity. So working collaboratively with the health department, we now have 2 of the stations at Harbor Heights that are picking up midday and moving next door to Goodman so that they can serve both Goodman students on site as well as staff. We also looked at Voyager Elementary, which had capacity, and this week Voyager tested up until 1 o'clock, actually until 1:20, and then we opened up the opportunity for Kopachuk staff and students who might be on site. Not as easy for the students, but at least for the staff, to walk next door and use their afternoon time to test at Voyager. Harbor Ridge does not have an adjacent campus like the other 2. But we redoubled our efforts to inform them of the opportunities that are available every afternoon. I'm sorry, not every afternoon, on Friday afternoons at both Gig Harbor Peninsula and also at Key Peninsula Middle School, if that's a convenient location for them. So we worked really hard to figure out how we might involve the middle schools more. We also realized that there was a gap for our bus drivers. They are busy driving during the day. And so what we did is we opened up each elementary school right after the students arrive, but before the students start testing, we opened up a window for bus drivers right at 9 o'clock after they drop the students off to go in and test as well. So we'll see how those adjustments work, and we'll see if we increase the opportunity for additional staff and students to test. We have had a task force. I think we've reported to you in the past on our task force. Thank you, board member Natalie Wimberly, for sitting on that task force. Natalie has been at all the meetings. That task force was essential in, first and foremost, them learning more about the testing. They provided advice to us on what questions those whom they represented would have, and that means parents, certificated staff members, as well as classified staff members. We met with them again last night, and we asked them what went well and what can we do better. And one of the things that they talked about we could do better was just around getting communication out earlier. That's a really difficult challenge as we work in collaboration with the health department. We're putting this thing together right before the Thanksgiving break and partially over the break. And I would just like to take a moment to compliment Amy Gordon, who's been working during the week and on the weekends, putting some of the communication together. So that has been a challenge, but Amy has rallied and done a really nice job there. Overall, the feedback from the task force was very positive. We had teachers and others expressing that families were appreciative. They also expressed that for some families, it's a hard no, and they didn't want to test, but most of the families were appreciative. What we found out as different schools were testing, we had one elementary school that received all of their consent forms and made phone calls to those families that they did not receive consent forms from. I would tell you that they got 3 different responses. One was a hard no. One was a, oh yeah, we've got to remember to complete that and send it with our child. And the third response was, hey, we just have some questions before we sign off on that. And so that outreach, that type of outreach really helped educate our community as well. But again, the responses were very positive. One of the responses from our own people was around, hey, we've heard that the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department staff that's on site, they're just so happy and helpful with both the staff and the kids. And when you're dealing with primarily kindergartners and first graders and some of our special populations, it was really great to hear that staff was welcoming to everybody involved. Finally, on the testing, we can share just a couple of anecdotes with you. John, I'm going to turn it back to you to share your anecdote. I believe it was from Voyager Elementary, if you'd like to.
Sure. So that first week, we were really curious to see how the kids will react. So we were watching them closely as they're being tested. And when they were done, they would go stand on a dot 6 feet away from their classmates, waiting for the class to finish testing. And so we'd chat them up and see how, we'd say, so did it hurt? Did it tickle? How did that feel? Was that okay? One little girl said a little surprising answer, which was, well, I can smell better now. So that was a little extra bonus that we didn't expect, clean out those nostrils.
And again, along the lines of kids say the darndest things, when we were on with the health department yesterday, and by the way, we meet with them twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday for a half-hour check-in just to kind of monitor and adjust. One of their staff indicated that they were talking to the kids after they tested and similar types of questions. And one of them said, well, the Q-tip smelled like Diet Coke. And another one said, I thought it smelled like nail polish remover. So, you never know what's going to come out of the mouths of our 5- and 6-year-olds. They have a unique perspective on the world, but they were not, for the most part, we don't believe that any of them were traumatized by the process. They just had a unique take on things. And so yeah, that's a quick summary of our testing data. What I would ask at this time is if there's any questions on that topic, we can cover those quickly with you before we move on to the other pieces that John and I will be visiting about shortly tonight.
I have a couple of, you don't mind I go first. I know, John, you said 2,300 tests, 5 positives. Were they teachers? What's the mix?
We just announced that that's individuals that have tested positive. So, and we also put that on our dashboard how many individuals that we have as we're trying to protect the confidentiality.
If I understand
so you can't say if it was staff or students?
Yeah.
I could say there were both staff and students that are in that 5.
Okay, that's fine. And that 2,300 5 positives, that's like 0.002%. So it's extremely low. Can I ask you, one of the reasons that I know we wanted to do this was to give another level of comfort for teachers to come back. Why are we only getting 83% of the teachers? Why aren't we getting a higher number? If you have any input on that, either one of you.
I don't know that we can speculate as to why that is, David, but what I will share with you, and I made a note of it here, I forgot to mention it, that the health department is interested in the perspective of teachers as well as parents. And they have a survey that we helped put out. And again, Amy helped us out putting that out to staff. I want to say we had around 300 responses already midday today when we met with them. It would be difficult for us to speculate at this time, but we're interested to see what that data says from teachers when we do get it back.
Okay, and my last thing is, I know John mentioned one of the reasons, or the reason that we're doing this testing is to identify people maybe that have COVID, but I was under the impression that one of the reasons was that we wanted to see whether, younger children carry the virus, and that might potentially be asymptomatic, but carry the virus home. Isn't that one of the reasons we're trying to find out how COVID is impacting our youngsters as far as the spread? And second follow-up to that would be, parents, that I've talked to are sort of asking what's the end game for the testing? Like, how long will it go on, and what's the actual end game that we have for the testing?
So I'll kind of go through those. First, yes, that we don't want people to be taking that home. So that is part of the purpose. I want to back up one step and just make it sure that when we're talking, you're asking about the 83% of teachers, it's not just teachers. We're talking about all staff, anybody on campus. So that could be, our classified staff, our office assistants, it's our food service workers, it's all of the staff that are on our campuses. I just wanted to make that point. Sorry, I forgot your last question.
Sorry, my other question, John, was what's the end game? So like, I know that we had money for testing for a couple weeks, and we've been into it for about 2.5 weeks. And then I don't know if the Department of Health has funds to test into 2021, but how long is the testing plan to go for? And even if funding in 21 is available, how long does the school district anticipate the testing going? Because I know parents probably want to know what's the end game.
So David, I would just comment on one of the other benefits of this that we hope is that it inspires greater confidence and maybe remove some of the assumptions that are in place. People have assumptions. Number one, they had assumptions about testing in and of itself. And so hopefully we alleviated some of those, but also different assumptions of who is and who isn't and how many are carrying the virus. This gives us actually some data to look at. And so they kind of hopefully remove some of the assumptions out of that. I'll answer the other part, and John can feel free to chime in. You bring up two things that we really don't know a lot about, but we're working on currently with the health department and others, and that is sustainability and scalability. I think those are two things that are still a mystery. I think that's one of the purposes that the health department maybe had was, will this work and how does it work? I will tell you that the feedback that they provided yesterday in our midday meeting was very positive, and I think they're surprised how well it's working. I don't know what data they're looking for, but I think the questions out there right now are sustainability and scalability. If they feel like it's working for them, then how are we able to sustain it in our district beyond December? And how might we scale it? For us, our concern is obviously scaling it larger in our district, but I think maybe one of their things that they want to look at is how do we scale this and make it bigger throughout the county, and it's being looked at the state level as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Other members?
David, I'd just like to add that I really appreciate the district working with the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department and bringing this to our district, as well as to other districts in the county. And pleased to see that the other two districts have also seen similar results. And it's really supporting the data, the research that's out there, that our schools are not the area where we're seeing spreading. And so it feels good to know that that is a reality, and that the precautions in place that we are putting, the masks, the 6 feet, all of the social distancing and hand washing is working. And so thank you for bringing that and seeing that. I know myself and probably all the other directors have visited the various schools and watched the testing sites, and extremely impressed with the professionalism of the Pierce County folks, as well as how our teachers, our administrators, and especially our students are handling this. I was watching some of our options kids and so proud of them in doing this. And it's working really well. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jump
We're
forward.
going to go ahead and move on now, if that's okay. And John's going to talk a little bit about where we are with grades 3 through 5, and then I'll chime in on grades 6 through 12 as well as we think about our moving forward and hope as we plan to bring students back to school in the future.
So for the third through fifth grade hybrid group, we do have an advisory team that's made up of a variety of different educators along with administrators. And we went through some possible options of what models might look like for a hybrid at grades 3 through 5. And also what considerations that would be important to think about no matter which model we would choose. For example, how will specialists work? And that's going to be something that we have to consider no matter which model we choose. So all of those considerations and possible models are out to buildings right now over the last week and through the first part of next week, where educators will have a chance to have a voice on that and provide some feedback. That'll come back to our advisory team next Wednesday. And our goal is to have a model chosen by the end of next week. So before we go back away for break. After that, we're going to be trying to communicate out to families what that model is, and then asking them, like we did with the younger grades, who, if that's the model, when we're able to bring them back, who would want to learn on campus and who would want to stay with fully remote, and so that we can staff that and get that ready to go. Before I turn it back to Dan to talk about 6 through 12, I just want to also express my gratitude for Deb for her great leadership over the years, and congratulate David and Lori in their new roles.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Before I do 6 through 12, I want to provide you a quick update. I've been working with Mr. Brooks, who Dr. Jarvis mentioned before. In addition to being the planning principal for elementary school number 9, he's taken on the responsibility of working with our teachers and kind of leading the remote K1 groups. As we reported to you earlier, that's going well. It's had its challenges. One of those was that the first grade class sizes were quite large. We did add a teacher to that group, and so we've lowered those class sizes a little bit. It's a little difficult for some families to move their kids from teacher to teacher, but we've brought those class sizes down. That new teacher started on Monday, and she spent a couple days transitioning and working with the other teachers on Monday and Tuesday, and took full control of having her own cohort of students today. And so we've dialed those numbers down a little bit. As we added that teacher, that also creates additional capacity for new students who are coming into the district, or any that want to move for whatever reason from in-person to remote. So we've developed some capacity there as well. We do have one more challenge though, in that we're seeing our kindergarten numbers increase. And so we're monitoring the kindergarten numbers in the remote group very closely as well. Now on to 6 through 12, similar to what John indicated, I just would like to compliment the 6 through 12 advisory team. In all, there's about 24 members, educators, administrators, a very broad representation, student services, special education staff from the building, as well as elective and core teachers. The team's been working very well. The team was struggling with some models initially and decided to find out what their colleagues value most. And so the team developed a list of value statements, had those value statements pushed out to the staff in the buildings to kind of rank those or prioritize them. We met last night and they were working through those prioritized value statements because we want those values, those prioritized values, to drive the model. We got into that work a little bit last night. It's really difficult work now, because now as we talk models, there's trade-offs. And one of the comments from the team was, hey, this is really hard. All 8 of these value statements, all of this is really important to us. And so that's when you start to have to make the difficult decisions and make the trade-offs. And so that group is meeting again on Monday, and they're going to start looking specifically at some models. We open the door for them to recommend some models, and we'll start matching models against value statements. And we'll move forward, gather some further input, and continue to work with the goal of being able to survey parents in the near future about whether they want to participate, their children to participate in the hybrid learning model or remain fully remote. And we plan on having that survey out in early January, which gives us time to plan prior to second semester.
Thank you. Any questions, board?
John, you
Nobody?
mentioned 3 through 5. Was second grade discussed in that?
Second grade, we have prepared to come on fully like K1, 4 days a week, full days. So we've got the staffing arranged for that. We have classrooms set up, ready to go. We were all prepared to do that before we kind of put the brakes on that. So the plan is still to move forward with that plan for second grade, so that when we're fully implemented, we'll have K through 2 in 4 days a week, full days, and 3 through 5 will be in a hybrid model.
And John, when are you looking for, I know you mentioned the survey up in January, but best case scenario, when would we have those hybrid models back in school?
To have the 3 through 5 back in school?
Yeah, in
Well,
the hybrid model.
It won't be the first week that we get back from school.
Right.
So we can let people know that. Other than that, I think we're just going to need to wait and see how it shakes out.
Okay.
I guess, David, I would add to
Anything
that
else?
question that what we're doing is planning, and we want to get the planning done as soon as possible, so that we have both of those groups, similar to what John talked about in second grade. Second grade is ready to go. So we'll have a little bit of cushion time that we'll need just to kind of not revamp, but bring people up to speed on that plan and make sure they're ready to go. But we want these other two, the 3 through 5 and 6 through 12, we want them ready to go so that when the opportunity presents itself, we don't have to plan from there. We're ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just say that it's going to take some time after we get the surveys to figure out how many sections are remote and then do some staffing changes. There's some time needed to make that transition, and we've said that we'd provide that time for transitioning with our educators.
Anything else from Dan and John?
Thank you, guys. I realize how difficult
you.
it is.
Thank you.
So now we'll hear from, oh, sorry.
I have a question real quick.
Go ahead.
Can you, if this could be done quickly, it's probably a longer answer, but I'm just wondering what it looks like when a student, this is back to the testing, when a student is either if they were to test positive, or really I'm thinking more of a student who through contact tracing is informed that they have potentially been exposed, so they need to quarantine at home, say a first grader. I would assume that would then look like for that student the same as it might look in any other time in the past. If a student were to break their leg or some unfortunate circumstance way pre-COVID, that might lead to a student unfortunately missing a couple weeks of school. But could you just briefly explain, like, as far as, because they can't just join the remote class, right? So could you just explain that real quickly?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You wouldn't reassign the student to a remote teacher. That the teacher, the in-person teacher would still be working with that student to help get their assignments, to make sure that they connect through Schoology and they're keeping up with the class. They might send some materials home, treat it just like you said, if somebody had an illness or a broken leg or something, would be treated like that.
Okay. Would there be a delay? Like, I'm wondering, like, what could parents expect if they get this call, your student will need to quarantine? Would they expect it would take several days to find out, what their student would be doing? Or
no, I think it can happen. it happens fairly quickly. The teachers are, one of the things is with the beginning of the year fully remote with all of our teachers, a lot of more of our materials are online, and it's easy for them to be accessed online. So that transition's a little quicker.
Lori, are you talking about notification of, because what they do is they take the rapid test, and then if they show positive on the rapid test, they're isolated and a PCR test is administered on site, and then they have to wait for those results. So boy, if you follow the health department, you'll see that there's been an increase in testing, which means there's a little bit more of a delay coming from the labs, and they usually say 5 to 7 days. Oftentimes, usually, I think they hear in 2 to 3 days. So I think they're kind of trying to under promise and over deliver, so to speak.
Right.
But yeah, generally they'll know within a couple of days whether that test was positive and they need to stay out, or whether it was a false positive. And then there's a really shorter protocol for them to return.
Okay. Thank you for explaining.
Dan, how many of those false positives are we getting out of the 5 positives that we've had? How many of those have come back with the other test as being positive?
That's a great question, Chuck. And I just have to compliment our staff that's been working on this. Miriam Atchison is our lead nurse, and she's got a hotline to the health department. She and I spoke yesterday because there was some thought that, well, somebody anticipated that theirs would have been a false positive. So we emailed the health department and say, what is the protocol if the PCR test comes back negative? So we haven't navigated those waters yet, and we're at least we have a protocol in place now to do so. Should that come true?
Well, I'm relieved to hear those numbers. It does. I just want to mimic, I guess, what Deb said. That's quite relieving to know that we're following that trend, and the data that's out there is accurate.
Hey, thank you, Don, John, and Dan. Appreciate it. So I guess we'll move on to Patrick Gillespie and Jeff Green for capital projects brief.
How you guys doing tonight? Thank you for having us. Just want to update you on where we're at with our capital projects that are going on. Lots happening out there. Deb, thanks for your leadership in getting that bond passed, and you know how much this means to our group, and I know how much it means to you. So thank you. David, congratulations, and Lori as well. Pioneer, we continue to move towards completion of the project. We have exterior finishes are close to being completed. Interior of existing building is nearing completion and is to be turned over to the district once inspections are complete. Sheetrock, paint, tile, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC are all being worked on in various stages in the new addition. North parking lot asphalt was completed earlier this week. South parking lot landscaping is completing with handrails and fencing, and north parking lot landscaping is starting as well. The roof on the new addition is close to completion, and we're working closely with the contractor to get this project complete and get moved in. So we're excited about that. ES9, steel erection of school is complete. Brick veneer installation is continuing. And something that's not written in the report, but really cool this week is we had some of the metal siding go up. And so you can really start to see the look and feel of that building. And it's really, really impressive. We're excited how it looks. The last section of the roof is being dried in. HVAC, electrical, and plumbing are all being installed throughout the building. Exterior sheeting is being insulated, and supports for metal siding is being installed. Window frames are being installed in preparation for glazing to arrive on site soon. Artendale, steel continues to arrive on site. Steel erection is taking place in Area C, and second floor decking is being installed. It's starting to kind of look like a building. You can see the Area C, it's the roof metal starting to go up. And so that's kind of an exciting point at Artendale right now. CMU block is currently being erected for the gym and the music room. Evergreen wood framing continues wood framing is continuing with completion expected by the first of the year. I was out there today, some really cool things. You can see the exposed wood beams for the library. I was up on the second deck in the library, super cool. I look forward to taking the board out there at a later date, sometime next year, as well as the exposed beams for the gym were being installed today as well. So really excited about the progress out there. Electrical, plumbing are taking place on the lower floors. Continue to work on district, sorry, missed some stuff here in my notes. Kopachuk and KPMS. We continue to work on district-wide water system plan, which will be required for permitting both of these projects. We have met with the county to discuss these projects at a pre-app meeting. Continue to refine exterior elevations presented to the board at the 10/22 study session. We hope to bring you the final renderings in the second board meeting, I think potentially in January. Value engineering has been completed, which is required for state funding. Recommendations for changes will be presented to the board at a future board meeting. Architect had meetings with staff to refine interior spaces such as library, admin offices, options, CTE. Communications and capital projects have worked to update website and add information banners at each of the construction sites. Recent issues of the compass have focused on each of the projects that we're currently working on. So there's a lot going on out there. We're really excited about where we're at in the process. Any questions you guys have?
No, just a comment that things are looking great. I've been driving by at least 3 of them. I don't get by Artendale very often, but it's just amazing to see the progress when you drive by once a week or even a couple times a week. Evergreen is just looking really impressive. Yeah, I can't wait to go inside and look up and see that ceiling with the open beams that you're talking about. In ES9, I got to drive by and see the brick that was going up on that, and that really looked nice. I'm surprised that each one of our new buildings has its own identity. There's nothing standard about them, and so you're doing a great job. Just a comment, just thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we got a great team. Vicky, probably listening in at home, has been a huge asset and help with picking out a lot of that, as well as our architect partners, TCF and Integris, and of course, Green Gasaway has been there with us the whole time. So yeah, it's a big team effort. Thank you for recognizing that. And I really can't wait to get you into Evergreen. I think you're going to love it when you see it.
I would just piggyback off what Chuck said. I drove out to Evergreen yesterday and got out of my car and walked around and looked around a little bit from afar and took some pictures, and it really is going to be a beautiful school. And I know those folks out that go to Evergreen and out on the KP are going to be really thrilled with that new school. And I appreciate the tour of Pioneer last week. I missed it when the board got to go through earlier in November. So getting to go get a tour of Pioneer was much appreciated. What a beautiful school Pioneer is on the inside. And I just can't wait to see it when it's finished. And it, like Chuck said, has its own identity, and those beautiful skylights in there are just going to be magical for those kids. And so thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, I'm excited about all 4 of them. Pioneer, really exciting to see the classrooms take shape. And one thing I didn't tell you is we did a virtual tour learning tutorial of the building. You would think that it's easy, you just go and turn on the light switches, but we had they're a little more complicated how to turn on the lights, how all of the pieces of that room work. And it's different than all of our other buildings. And so the teachers were really excited to see it, and they wanted to see more. So we can't wait to get those teachers in there.
Yeah, I'll just add, Patrick, Jeff and Vicky and Art, thank you for keeping us on time and on budget with these now 6 facilities that we are adding to not only our school system, but our community. These are community buildings that we are adding, and I really appreciate everything that's going into it. It's going to be fantastic to see all that completed in time.
Anybody else? Laura, Natalie, anybody else? Okay. Okay. Anything else, Patrick?
No, thank you all for your time, and I look forward to showing you more of our buildings as they get further completed down the road. Have a great night.
You bet. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you. Okay, Karen Anderson, our Business Finance Department with a report, budget report. Hello, Karen.
You're muted.
You're on mute.
See, that's the slogan that we have to get used to. Okay, I need to share my screen. Come on. Okay, can you, no, it's not showing. Okay.
You want me to go, Karen?
Can you see that?
I can see it.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So I've got Kelly Pearson with me. Kelly and I are going to present the year-end financials for 2019-20. I'm going to do the general fund. I'm going to share general fund information and capital projects, and Kelly's going to wrap it up. And then we'll probably ask questions for each fund as we go through. I want to apologize in advance. It's a bunch of numbers. I don't have anything flashy to share, but it's not bad news and just a lot of numbers. So I want to preface that. I'm going to start. Okay. So with the general fund, originally we anticipated enrollment to be around 9,190. And we actually came in higher than that, about 49 FTE above that. So our revenue was higher than what we originally budgeted. One of the things that happened with the year when we experienced the school closure in March, for the months of April, May, and June, our enrollment was adjusted from our March count, was adjusted and prorated based on what had happened in the previous year. So what had happened in 2018-19 to our enrollment was reflected on our enrollment for the end of the year for last year. So what we ended with is really a proration, and that was so that we wouldn't, because we didn't have a means of taking enrollment during the closure. So for our revenues, comparing budget to actuals, our local taxes came in a little bit over what we had originally budgeted. Our local non-support, which is fees for classes and goods and services, donations, rentals, E-rate, they came in a little bit higher than anticipated. And a lot of that is because those things had happened early in the year and weren't really affected by the closure at the end of the year. Our state apportionment, again, we had enrollment that came in higher, and so all of our state programs and apportionment benefited from that. And so we came in higher, our revenues came in higher than what we had originally anticipated. Our federal funding also came in higher. There's a couple of things that happened there. One of the biggest pieces to that is the CARES Act funding that we received and claimed for expenses that we incurred pretty much over the summer months and when we were in remote learning for the months during the school closure. So we did a lot of, we had to purchase devices. We got a lot of hotspots and to support the remote learning program. And then we went into purchasing PPE and additional cleaning supplies. And so we were able to claim a significant portion of our CARES Act funding by the end of August. And that came to about 500, a little over 500,000. Total CARES Act funding that we received is 600,000, and the balance of that will be claimed this year for the expenditures that we've incurred this fall going into the new school year. And then the balance is, remember that when we, under other, we have a contingency for unanticipated programs and revenues, and we have an offsetting expenditure capacity for the same amount. So overall, our revenues came in about 1.6 million more than what we had anticipated or budgeted. On the expenditure side, our certificated and classified salaries came in pretty close to what we had budgeted. There's a little bit of a variance, and that is we anticipate extras in staffing, but we also anticipate sub costs, and I don't know that we had as many sub costs related to the end of the year. And so that might be why our variances are a little bit higher in the certificated balance, but pretty close to what we had budgeted. So we were in good shape there. The big changes were in employee benefits. And I need to remind everyone that when we built this budget, we were facing moving into a new health benefit program, SEB, School Employees Benefit Board, as of January 2020. And the rules kind of changed for those individuals that were eligible for benefits. So when we built the budget, we have employees that for the first part of the year, September through December, were not eligible for benefits and became eligible for benefits in January. So when we built the budget, we built the budget anticipating all individuals having benefits. It was just easier to do that. And so anyone that we anticipated would be eligible in January for benefits, we budgeted for full benefits for those individuals. So there is a balance in what we budgeted. Basically, we didn't know what was going to happen with the SEB costs. And so we anticipated for those extra costs. And so that is why we over budgeted there. But I can say that now that we're in SEB, those costs will be incurred because we are paying full benefits for folks now that we didn't in the past. For supplies and materials, we typically have a balance in this area, mainly because it relates to carryovers. So we allocate department budgets and building budgets, and they don't spend everything. And so this is typically where we have a lot of carryover from year to year. And so it's very typical to have a balance in this category. For purchase services, we did exceed our budget in this category. I think a lot of things that happened here is typically we have professional development that goes on during the year. At the end of the year, we had to incur some additional professional development, and I'm thinking during the summer months, specifically related to remote learning. And so we did incur some additional costs for professional development that weren't originally anticipated to support what we needed to do for the next school year. There were some other unanticipated contracted services, and they all related to some of the things that had happened with going remote and needing some support for doing the remote learning program. For travel, again, a lot of things stopped at the end of the year, so we didn't experience as many folks going on conferences or travel. Everything was being done by Zoom. We had lots of Zoom conferences. So there were some registrations, but we weren't incurring the travel costs related to those. And then the last category is capital outlay. We typically budget conservatively here, but we do allow buildings and programs to purchase what they need. And I would say a large piece of this is related to CTE. They were able to take some of their funds this year, and they were able to buy some 3D printers and some additional machinery for some of their newer programs to support those programs and start to build those programs with more modern high technology equipment. So those are kind of what had happened with our expenditures. Overall, we had basically a savings of $5 million that we didn't spend that we had budgeted. So are there any questions about expenditures?
Not a question, but a comment, Karen. I just, while the purchase services and the extra professional development and training, I just want to thank you and Art for affording and finding a way to do that our teachers and staff could be very well prepared and have that training and that professional development. And I think the teachers and staff are taking advantage or using that opportunity over their summer to have that professional development so they are ready for the fall. So, you know, while it is an extra expense, I think it's where we need to be investing, and I really appreciate it. So thank you all.
Karen, I know a couple of months ago or in a previous meeting, you had mentioned that we had quite a few students below our expectations for enrollment. And on this one, you're saying that we're above our projections. So where did that flip?
So the reduced enrollment is for current year. And we're reporting on what happened last year. So the previous school year.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So so as a summary, we generated more revenues than what we had anticipated. We didn't spend as much as we had anticipated, so we are adding to our fund balance. And we added a little over $3.7 million to our ending fund balance, or our beginning fund balance of $13.5 million. So our ending fund balance is at $17.3 million. That is some of that is restricted and some of that is unassigned. And I would say the restricted is related a lot to carryover of building budgets and categorical program budgets that didn't get spent.
That was my bad. I was thinking calendar year, not thinking fiscal year. So thanks for clearing that up. That's appreciate it.
That's not a problem. I do want to talk a little bit about this increase. What I would say is that we are experiencing this year, we are experiencing an enrollment decline, significant. And because of that, we're not experiencing a decrease in expenditures. We've already made commitments, contract commitments for staffing. And what we're finding is that running a remote and a hybrid in-person, we are experiencing, we need those people and we need more sections in some cases. And so we are experiencing, I don't want to say it's an inefficient system, but we are experiencing costs that don't necessarily create efficient spending of what's happening with our revenues. And so what is that this ending balance is going to be needed to help us survive this next year, because we don't have the funding coming in supported by students, but we do have the expenses that haven't gone away. We're not saving funding or saving money at this point. And we are incurring some costs that we typically wouldn't incur. And we have received some federal funding for this next year that helps with some of the expenses, but it doesn't cover everything. And we're still paying for staffing, medical benefits. We've got some people that are on leaves of absences, and we're still paying benefits for them. And we're having to hire staff to cover those classes. So it's a very expensive year, especially with the decline and the loss of enrollment. And so we will need this fund balance to help us get through this next year. So I just wanted to point that out. The makeup of the fund balance, as I said before, a lot of it is assigned to other purposes. That $6.3 million is carryover. It's funds that the buildings or the departments didn't spend, and there's a commitment. They're going to need it for this next year to help get through some of that. There also might be some savings that we might have too. So are there any questions about general fund?
Just a little bit on the CARES Act stuff. I assume we've tapped into pretty much everything we can get out of the CARES Act.
Yes.
And I know there's something else coming forward. Any indication that it's going to mimic the CARES Act? Have you heard anything on what we might be able to get out of this next revenue thing coming down from the feds?
We haven't heard anything, no details at all. Early on, the CARES Act funding that we received an original allocation, and then the balance, we received 80%. We waited to see what we were incurring as expenses, and we have to basically claim the funding. So we had to match expenses to what we were incurring, so that were allowable costs, so that we could claim that funding. So as I said, we received about $628,000 for CARES Act funding. We claimed a little over 500,000 for 2019-20, and the balance of that will be incurred or claimed this fall because of the costs that we incurred starting the new year, the new school year. The one thing about our CARES Act funding, most of the CARES Act funding has to be spent by December 31st. Our CARES Act funding goes through we can spend it through the end of this school year, which is kind of nice because there are several districts out there that they went after FEMA money, which is also federal. And there was a concern that districts weren't claiming the CARES Act funding quickly. And the reason why is because the FEMA process is a more labor intensive process, but school districts wanted to see what they would get in the FEMA arena before they claimed their CARES Act funding. But I would say that all of the districts that I know of, that I've talked with, we've spent more than what we were eligible and what we got. And so it's pretty much gone. And so if there is another round that comes from the federal government, we have not heard anything about that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. So the next fund that I'm going to talk about is the Capital Projects Fund. And you just heard the exciting report from Patrick about all the things that we're doing. And this is just kind of a wrap up of what actually happened financially in this fund. This is where the projects are being, the project costs are being incurred. We did have a bond sale in May of 2020 that we sold the balance of our bonds that we were eligible for because now we have 4 elementary school projects going. And I can say that up until about June, July timeframe, I was kind of wondering, the expenses are kind of, and then all of a sudden the expenses started coming in and we are spending money because everything is going full bore at this point. So for capital projects, our revenues, which are a combination of impact fees for Gig Harbor, the city of Gig Harbor, and for Pierce County, and our investment earnings, were a little over $2 million. The other funding that we received was from the bond sale, and that was $114 million. Our expenditures for the last year were about $38 million. So with a beginning balance of 74 million, we have an ending fund balance of 151. Of that, 144.7 are still bond proceeds that need to be spent. We have impact fees for Pierce County of about 3.1 million. We have the city of Gig Harbor impact fees of 2.5, and we have an other balance unassigned of a little over $1 million. And I believe that was from a sale of property way back many years ago. What I would say at this point is that as we are spending the funds this year, and we are now getting to the point where we are using some of the impact fees for the projects. So we're making sure that we're staying within that 10-year time period to spend the impact fees. We are, I believe, I'm not quite sure, but I believe we are getting close to claiming state funding because we've met our responsibility. We have to pay so much on the projects, and then if we get state match, we can start to claim that state match. And so we are reaching that level at this point in time. We didn't see as much activity last year as what we had anticipated, but this year will be our big heavy year of construction costs. And we will also have the planning costs for the middle schools. So it'll be significantly different by the end of next year or this year. Deb.
Thank you, Karen. And just as more of a reminder to us, the reserve bond proceeds of 144 million, those aren't just left over. Those are to be spent on the current 6 projects that we're doing. So they're within that budget. Okay. My question then is more around the impact fees for both Pierce County and especially Gig Harbor. We anticipated those to start dropping off, correct? We're seeing an increase here. Was that a surprise? And are we going to anticipate those increasing, or will we see that drop off?
I don't know that we've seen a significant drop off. They've tapered down, but we're still getting them on a consistent basis. What I would say is that when we sold the bonds, one thing that happened is we had a jump in investment earnings. So some of that increase is due to additional investment earnings over that higher balance that we were investing. And so like many years, we have arbitrage that we have to monitor. And so we have arbitrage compliance doing the calculations and making sure. But any of the investment money that we make, we have to make sure that we spend it on the projects within 3 years. Okay. So we're staying within that. With the funding, with the expenses that we're incurring at this point, because of the turnover and because of the projects being in full swing, we're not going to have any problem using up the bond funds, and we'll be, using up the impact fees, and we're moving according to the cash flow. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that we got that second bond sale done, so that we could have those proceeds and be able to sustain the expenditure side.
Okay. Well, amazing work monitoring all that and making sure that we're not losing because of a time expiration or whatnot. On the state match, Karen, it shows 0. And I just probably missed this. You may have addressed it, but have we received any state match yet, or that's coming? And when we do receive state match, is that spent before bond money is spent, or how does that work?
So what happens is that as we receive the funds, whatever we don't spend, we have to put in these reserves. We have to identify them as reserves. So as we get the state match funding, Vicki will do a very delicate balance of some of this payment will be out of bond, some of this will be state match, some of this will be impact fees. Right now we're using the bond proceeds because that's our revenue source pretty much, and we're using some impact fees. What I would say is that we're going to start to run out of bond funds, and at that point we'll start to use the state match that has come in. So we won't be using them, we won't be spending them simultaneously. Okay. What we'll do is we'll use those bonds first. We'll use up the impact fees so that we stay on that cycle that we're using them within 10 years of receiving them. And then we'll use up the state match.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Karen, question for you, since you've mentioned it, the interest earned from the investments, must it be applied to capital projects? Can the investment interest be applied to the debt service? And I know arbitrage can be very profitable, but why are we prevented from arbitrage? Is it because it's taxpayer money?
Yes, and yes. And what we're saying basically is we need those funds. So we shouldn't be making money on our money, I guess is what I said. we need to be responsible, and there's laws that basically say whatever you earn, you need to spend within a certain amount of time. Otherwise, if you didn't need that money, you shouldn't be benefiting and making more money on that, because that's an obligation that we said for our taxpayers, that we were going to sell a certain amount in bonds, and that's what we needed to do our construction projects. So it's really that it's the obligation of making sure that we're not abusing that privilege of having those bonds, if that makes
So
sense.
we're forbidden from arbitrage, but interest earned, do we have to put it towards the project, or can it go towards the debt service?
We put it towards the projects.
Okay.
Because we earned it in that fund, we don't transfer it over to the debt service fund.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Take it away, Kelly.
Good evening. First of all, I want to congratulate President Olson. Thank you for being willing to serve, and I look forward to working with you. And Deb, it's been great, and I'm so glad that you're still around. So thank you, and thanks to all the board. I don't get a chance to speak to you very often, so wanted to say thank you. So I'm going to be talking to you about the other funds that we have. So first up is our debt service fund. Karen has talked a little bit about it. And this first slide, just, do you want to advance, Karen? Oh, you went by it already. First one back. It just shows that what our annual debt service payments were, how much was principal and how much was interest. And the reason 1920 is mostly interest is we were just finishing up some bonds, and the new ones, it'll look very different in 2021. Next slide just shows a quick summary of what debt service fund looked like in 1920, last fiscal year. Our revenues and expenses were pretty much exactly what we want, except for the other financing sources was not something we had budgeted for. And that came out of the sale of the bonds. There were some bond premiums that we were able to include there, and that counts as revenue with this fund. So that's why you see that there is one line by itself. But other than that, everything else came out pretty close to what we had expected. Tax payments were pretty much right on, and payments are scheduled. So it's a pretty quiet fund. So that's all there really is for debt service fund. Do you have any questions about that one? So the next one is the Associated Student Body Fund. You'll hear us call it the ASB fund. And any of you who have students in middle school or high school, you're familiar with this. It's probably my favorite fund because this is where all the fun stuff happens. And we have ASBs at all 3 high schools and all 4 middle schools and 2 of the elementary schools. And those are all run by the students, which is kind of cool. It's a little different this year with the pandemic, but they're doing it, and they're still doing some pretty neat things. So the students are largely responsible for setting their budgets, revenues, and expenses. And they meet every year in the springtime, and they look at it. They go from the club level all the way up to the total fund. They submit those to the business office, and then you guys get to see them when we go to the board. And so on revenues, we fell short, and it looks like a big number, but if you look at the last 3 years, we had a number similar to that, $800,000 to $900,000 a year. And that's because the students build in some contingencies or capacities to earn extra revenues. And the same thing happens with the expenses, that we usually fall short of expenses about $800,000. It was more this year because so many things were canceled in the springtime. All the big trips were canceled, all the big performances were canceled, and expenses that those students had planned on doing just didn't happen. So that's why the expenses fell short. So other than that, the fund is pretty much exactly the way we would expect it to be. That's it for ASB. Any questions about that fund? I like it. All right, and the last fund we have is our transportation vehicle fund. And we use this for buying yellow buses. So not the vans and other vehicles that we might use here in the school district. Is the big yellow buses and the little yellow buses. So currently, as of the end of August, we had 64 large buses and 38 small buses. And this year, in last fiscal year, the 1920 fiscal year, so next slide, Karen, please, thank you. We bought 4 little buses at about $76,000 a bus. One was a little more, and 4 big buses. And that's what we had pretty much budgeted to do. So the revenue fell short a little bit on that, but not much. And the expenditures were pretty much right on. We had rounded up on some of our budgeting for buses because last minute charges, you never really know. We did have some vehicles get totaled last year, and the insurance proceeds on those were fairly small because those vehicles were at the end of their depreciation cycle. And that's what we have for transportation vehicle. That's all I have.
I think that's pretty much it. What I would say, I do want to add one thing about the transportation vehicle fund. We have way back, we had a grant for to purchase 4 buses, and it was a federal grant. And those buses, at the same time that we had the grant, we had to match it. And so we bought another 4 to match. It was a matching grant. So we bought 8 buses. At the same time, there was a delay in the engine for those buses. And so we ended up purchasing another 4. And so we actually had 12 buses that came in at 1 year, all at the same time. Those buses are now reaching the point where they're going to go off the depreciation schedule. And so what we have tried to do is, rather than having to buy 12 big buses all at once, we have tried to spread that out so that we're not impacted when those buses become spares and go off the depreciation schedule. So what we've done over the last few years is we've purchased maybe 1 extra large bus so that the impact when those others come off won't be as significant. And so I want to say, when we do finally surplus those 4 federal grant buses, we have to go through a formal process. So we will probably have to bring that before you. And it might be a little bit different than our normal surplus process. Usually we just ask you to surplus a bus, but we will make more formal presentation because they are federally funded buses, and we need to make sure that we've got documentation that we've actually surplus them, and then we actually have to document how we disposed of those buses. So it'll be a little bit more of a formal process. But I did want to bring that up to you as to why we have been purchasing more larger buses than typically. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 a year. So that's.
Karen, I'm sorry, for the new board members, can you just say how you traditionally dispose of the buses?
So pretty much we go through a surplus process. We bring that forward, and we basically declare that there's surplus, and we have the board approve that. And then we basically can sell those buses. There are some buses that have been purchased by the fire department, and they use them as what would you call it, Chuck?
I would call it a training prop.
Training, yes, there you go. Use it for training purposes. We do know that we've sold some buses, and they've actually gone down to the Mexico and Guatemala and are used down there. So we don't get a lot of money for them, but we do try to sell them and get something. We might get 2,500 for a bus, but they're pretty much, there's a lot of miles on those buses by the time that we're surplusing them.
Karen, there's some revenue in there from a grant that the Key Peninsula Community Council gets from the state, and it does a little bit of a bus service out here. Where's that money shown up in there? You know, the grant that I'm talking about?
That is a grant that runs through the general fund because it's an operations grant. So we have a grant. We call it the KP Connect. So the Key Peninsula Connect. It allows us to provide transportation for citizens on our yellow buses. We can bring them in from the Key Peninsula and we bring them to the Purdy Park and Ride because there is no county transportation. There's no mass transit transportation available on the Key Peninsula.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple questions. One for each of you. Kelly, what is the impact? What will be the impact of the cancellation of Winterfest and Tidefest? What is that money used for?
They use that for all kinds of things. So yeah, it's an impact.
Significant. I would think it's significant.
It is for both schools, and they're trying to be very clever about ways to come up with, to make up those funds. So I've heard some pretty clever ideas, but nothing's been voted on by the students to actually go forward. Some of the things they've thought about is like a virtual version of each of those. So instead of having everybody in the gymnasium with their booths, instead of doing that, have some sort of a virtual form of that. Another idea was setting up tents outside when the weather's nicer and distance them far apart and do sort of a fair that way. There's been some online ideas that the students have come up with, but the things that those events fund aren't happening either. So the bigger things will be where the students are going to be impacted is any big trips that they had planned like last year or this fiscal year. They may not be able to go on those trips. So students that wait every 4 years to go are going to miss out on their cycle.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Said he had a question for. Yep. Thank you.
Well, I actually do. I have another question. I was debating whether I wanted to ask it. I was working up to it. I know we're talking about, this is for Karen. I know we're talking about last year, but I have to ask this question regarding this year and the drop in enrollment. Could you just touch on, if there's a short-ish answer to this? Obviously families, I'm sure we're all in agreement, families need to and should absolutely do what is best for their own children. But I do occasionally hear from people who suggest that they might pull their kids out of the district to send a message of some sort to the district, I think, to remove funding and such. Could you just touch on, for my benefit as well, what that actually looks like if enrollment is to decline significantly, which is happening in every district, I would imagine. But who starts to feel that pinch? It's not coming out of my school board director salary, I can tell you. since I make zero, I should clarify.
I guess what I would say is we're trying to run a program that is not exactly efficient. So we have expenses that we're going to have to pay no matter what. What I would say is that for the students that didn't show up or didn't come in, I believe there's various reasons for that. I guess the hope would be that we haven't lost them completely, and that if we can get students back in at some point in this school year, that we'll start to see students coming back. We may not see that until next year. If we are able to get back into a more regular routine of in-person, then the hope would be that we will see students return to the district. I think there are a lot of circumstances. I don't know that, maybe you've heard of things, but I believe that in the beginning, our significant loss was families trying to figure out how they were going to make it work. And I would say that we lost more students at the elementary level, and some of that largely was the kinder. And not all of the kindergartners have to be in school. So there might be families that are saying, you know, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to wait and see, and I'm going to do what I can, and I'll make sure that they're there next year. So I guess that's my hope and my belief. I don't think that there's a mass, we're going to punish the district. I think everyone has to make their choices of what works for them. What I would say to counter that, I think we have to be, and I say we have to look at our budget, and we have to say, what do we really need to spend, and where can we save? Do we have to do certain things right now? And I would say we're not spending as much on supplies. But then again, there's the in-person. So we are spending, you know, instead of one set of you know, class materials, we're having to get multiple class materials. So there's trade-offs. You know, as I said, the carryovers that we have from 1920, fiscal year 1920, are going to be needed for this year because there are additional costs that just running, you know, two programs. We're running a remote program, and we're running an in-person program as much as we can. We're running a transportation system. We're paying drivers, but we're not transporting as many students. Our classrooms aren't as full. So there's a lot of things that are happening, and we're trying to do the best that we can. And if we can save, we're trying to do that, but we're going to need that fund balance to help get us through this year. How that translates into the future, the hope would be that we can get back to a more in-person, lots more in-person, and we can start next year off, you know, the 2021-22 school year off with kids being in school, and hopefully we'll get, you know, a revenue increase there because we have more students.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Karen, just quickly, since Lori opened the box, I was on a Zoom meeting last night, and the state, someone from the state legislator mentioned that the state is facing a $1 billion shortfall deficit for 2021. I know when the state has a $2 or $3 billion surplus, they can allocate more money for school districts across the state. Is there, and this, I don't know if this is a better question for Art, but are there any whispers of how that $1 billion deficit could possibly impact school districts in the state?
You want me to jump in, Karen?
Well, I'll start, you can finish. What I would say is that, you know, we understand that there is a state shortfall. We also know that, you know, nothing is sacred, and you know, I guess our constituents and we need to do this job that we can to maybe hold and ask that we not be harmed, but the state legislature is going to have to make certain decisions. They're going to see that enrollment is down, and they're going to see that as a savings. The problem is that that's not lost enrollment. The enrollment is going to come back. And so I think what we're hoping is that we can hold on to our current status and not be pushed back, I guess is what I would say. Art probably can say that much better than I can. So I will let him take over.
I wouldn't say better. I would just add to that. I had a chance to testify in front of the Senate Ways and Means Committee a week and a half ago on this very subject, and I was one of 3 superintendents. In essence, because of the under enrollment this fall, the legislature, the budget will pay $500 million less each year for the 2 years. That's where the potential $1 billion savings for the legislature comes from, not paying the school districts. But in that process, if they do that, I would say Senator Rolfus, who chairs that Senate Ways and Means Committee, said that your question, David, will be the #1 question facing the legislature, because they know that it will take additional funds to reopen school, that it's not going to be done on the same funding or less funding. You don't save money. It's a very expensive process. So if they took those monies out of the public schools, they will actually disable many school districts on being able to meet the obligations to bring students back. Secondly, we don't know the status of the federal funds in order to do the countermeasures necessary to keep schools open. And thirdly, and very importantly, is that there are casualties in essence from the loss of 10 months of in-person schooling, and that it will cost districts and the state extra monies to try to find summer programs, extended programs, more lap programs, programs that fill gaps for kids. So it is a push-pull where potentially there is that $1 billion that the state could underspend for schools. But if they do, they will literally work against their very own agenda to get the schools reopened, to benefit kids, to do what's necessary. That's again identified by the Senate Ways and Means Committee as probably their #1 issue they have to face. My testimony was, please keep the schools funding stable. Do not take advantage of this one fall with a decreased enrollment and then put the school districts in a position that they can't do what they need to do in the springtime and summer and fall. So over answered, David, but I try to give you that picture.
Thank you. That was a great answer, actually. I think it answered it very well. So thank you very much. Thank you, Karen, and your staff for all you guys do. I think you do amazing. There's no other questions. We'll move on to agenda item 10. Having a mute issue. There's no other questions. We'll move on to agenda item number 10, new business. So item number 10.1 is approval of change order number 8 to Forma for Pioneer Elementary Project. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is that Natalie? Thank you. Second.
Second.
Okay, so it's a move by Natalie and second by Deb.
Lori.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lori, sorry. So all in favor to approve item 10.1, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? So motion's carried. Item 10.1 has been approved. Okay, next item 10.2 is a second reading and adoption of K through 5 grade STEM curriculum. This item was presented for first reading and comment at the November 12th board meeting. Is there a motion to approve item 10.2? Okay, it's motion's made by Deb. Is there a second?
Second.
Lori, okay. So
Natalie.
it's been moved by Deb, seconded by Lori. Okay.
We'll start raising our hands.
Raise your hand, yeah. Yeah, that all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Item 10.2 is approved. Item 10.3, policy revision, second reading and adoption, policy 4275, distribution of materials. This item was presented for first reading and comment at the November 12th board meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
A motion to approve.
Okay. Been moved by Chuck. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Natalie. Okay, it's been moved by Chuck and seconded by Natalie. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. Item 10.3 is approved. Item 10.4, policy revision, second reading and adoption. Policy 3413, student immunization and life-threatening health conditions. This item was also presented for first reading and comment at the November 12th board meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll
Been moved
second.
by Chuck, seconded by Lori. Okay. Been moved by Chuck, seconded by Lori to approve item 10.4. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. Item 10.4 is approved. Item 10.5, new policy, first reading, policy 4310, social media. As this is a first reading, no action is required. This item will be brought back for a second reading and adoption at our next meeting. If the board has any questions or comments, please submit those to the superintendent at your earliest convenience. Item 10.6, policy revision, first reading, policy 5253, maintaining professional staff and student boundaries. As this is a first reading, no action is required. This item will be brought back for second reading and adoption at our next meeting. If the board has any questions or comments, please submit those to superintendent at your earliest convenience. That brings us to agenda item number 11, consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda prior to the vote?
Just a thank you to and the Rotary Club for the donations.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, so I'm going to say it's been moved by Deb because I saw her lips move and seconded. I would let Chuck second. I'm watching for lip reading. Okay, it's been moved by Deb, seconded by Chuck. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion is carried. Consent agenda has been approved. Okay, next item is always fun. Item number 12, board discussion and comment. Any board members want to give any comment on what's happened in the last couple of weeks? Who wants to go first? Raise a hand. Natalie.
I'll go. I always go first, but that's okay. So I would just echo the heartfelt gratitude to Deb for the last couple of years of your service. It has been an honor to work with you and learn from you. And congratulations to David and Lori. I'm excited that we all get to continue moving forward together. So my brief. It's been long. At year-end wrap, to mention some of the groups that I've been working with and express appreciation for them as well. First has been most recently the testing task force. I think it's a great group of individuals. I think of that task force brought some and developed a program that has received attention from the entire state. Deb and I were able to present to WASDA last week, and it has received not only a lot of attention, but a lot of praise. And I think we're going to see a lot of people try to follow suit in building the way that we do. So thank you to all who've made that happen. We've also received some national attention from that. If anyone saw the Fox News clip last weekend, Dr. Jarvis was interviewed on a national news segment. That was really exciting and did a great job. Even though the guy from LA kept over speaking, I think we got the final word in there. Another group I worked with was the CTE Advisory Committee. So we heard from Aaron last month, but a lot of exciting things coming out of that group. And just again, another round of appreciation for all of the people who are working on that. I think we are going to develop some really cool pathways for our kids. Parent District Council is another group that I work with, and I wanted to thank Kristen Nordquist specifically for putting in so much time and effort to that group. With representation for each of the buildings, it's been a lifeline to relay information in a timely manner, and I appreciate all of the parents who participate in doing that and representing your school communities. And lastly, year-end wrap up to all. It's been a challenging year and one that we did not expect, certainly not as a new board member. I think we've seen divergent thought processes and just the way we approach life in general. Schools, of course, are a big part of that. And I want to thank everyone who has contributed in public comment or emails. They've not been easy, but we appreciate your passion for students and coworkers and your families. And I hope that moving forward into the new year, our focus will be on getting these kids back in the building and back with their teachers. It's where we all thrive and do the best. So I wanted to wish everyone happy holidays, however you celebrate. Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah. So to those families who are celebrating tonight, I hope you have a wonderful experience. And to all of our winter holidays and break, I hope it's restful and joyful for you all.
Thank you, Natalie. Deb?
Okay, I'll go. Thanks, Natalie, and thanks all for the praise and the well wishes for David and Lori as well. So it's been a nice evening. So we all participated in the WASDA conference mid-November, and we all got a taste of what remote learning looks like. So it was a 3-day remote learning program. We were basically online from 8 a.m. till some nights 7 or 8 p.m. So it had me reflect on what remote learning felt like, and it's challenging both for the presenters, teachers, and the students. So it's a good reflection. At that meeting also, though, we got to listen to Amy Campbell, who is the Teacher of the Year out of Camas, Washington. And she was sharing a lot about the inclusion work that they're doing with some of their special needs students in their schools, and other schools were also contributing. And it made me really appreciative of the work that we do in Peninsula School District with our special needs and some of our option groups. Our teachers are amazing in that, and our district is so accepting and has brought so many of our kids already. Some districts are all their special needs students are in one building or in one portable, and they're not in the gen ed classes at all. And the fact that we are so far beyond that it made me very proud. It also, not only that presentation, but others throughout the 3-day conference of different areas made me really think that we need to look at, and I look at Dr. Jarvis and Tanya and Amy, we need to look at presenting some of our great work at these conferences in the future. We have some great things going on in here, and I hope we can share that with the rest of the Washington State schools. I call out John Yellowes and his team on that. I could just see you guys presenting there, as well as many other organizations and or departments in our district, and just the options staff and the paras that work with our option kids. We need to be sharing the great work we're doing. So, and also Teacher of the Year. We have them in our district. Let's figure out how to get those recognized, because we have some amazing teachers. So that's just a reflection on WASDA. It was a great meeting. David made reference to the Pierce County Legislative briefing that we did last night. So the superintendents and board members and state representatives from the Pierce County area gathered via Zoom. But it was a good opportunity for the superintendents to really articulate the stable funding that we need going forward to bring our kids back and to afford this kind of different budgeting schedule that we're going to be looking at as we try to catch our kids back up and afford bringing kids back both remote and in person. So it's expensive, and I appreciate the stable funding. I wanted to thank Michelle Caldier for attending, as well as Emily Randall sending representatives to that meeting. I've gone the last couple of years to this meeting, and we haven't had any representatives from the 26th, so it was good to see a couple of them actually attend and hear the concerns of our district. So thank you. And I mentioned earlier, been into the schools watching testing, and just it was good to sit down and talk with some of the teachers, that they're feeling very confident with the testing being in the schools, and as another layer of protection and kind of a precaution work. So thank you again. That's it.
And before Chuck, real quick, before we move on to school directors, since this is our last board meeting and it's been a unique year for our student reps, perhaps Connor and Tyson would just want to give us a quick wrap up of their thoughts of being on the board virtually in this unique year. So Connor, you want to go first this time? If he's still there. Tyson?
I'm here.
Okay.
Thoughts on what exactly?
I'd just like to get your get your opinion. In the past, our student reps have been in person at the board meetings and been able to interact with the board, in a much more personal way. And I'd just like to sort of get your thoughts on how it's been to serve as a student rep during COVID year, since this is our last board meeting for the year.
It certainly is different. It would certainly be a lot more personal connection with all of you guys if we were in person, getting to know each other better, seeing each other face to face instead of over a Zoom call. But it has been, just like we are in school, trying to make the most of everything and trying to see the positivity and everything in the end. So we're doing the best that we can, and it's I think it's good. I think that this is the best way we can communicate with each other and get to know each other at this time. So this is it's been a good experience so far, and hopefully sooner we'll get to meet in person and get that more personal connection. But as of right now, it is still good, in my opinion.
Good. Connor?
I mean, yeah, I would certainly say it's not the worst possible way of doing this. There's certainly other alternatives that could definitely end up being worse, but obviously it's not the best either. Like Tyson said, we're kind of doing the best that we can, and eventually we'll hopefully be able to, by the end of this year, probably have an in-person meeting or something like that. And then we'll be able to truly, I feel like, have a normal board meeting eventually, hopefully.
Deb mentioned the WASDA conference, and in the past, we've taken our student representatives with us to the WASDA conference, and it's a nice opportunity for them to see how WASDA works. But then we always take them out to dinner with us one evening, just to bond with the board a little bit. So maybe in the spring, we can still find a way for us all to get together and treat you guys out to a dinner out. I know where I don't want to go, but I won't say that out loud. But I'd been awesome to take you out all three of you in the spring when we can get back to in person and sort of make up for that lost WASDA dinner. So we really appreciate having you on the board. So Chuck, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, so I want to also say thank you to Deb. Really appreciate everything you've done. I've been on a lot of boards. I haven't been on a school board before, I'm the new kid, but your leadership has been very phenomenal.
Thank you,
I
Chuck.
appreciate it. Yeah. Being the new kid, me and Natalie on the board this year, it's been quite an education, and it's been enlightening to see how well we are doing as a school district, as a school board. When you, I'm going to say go to the WASDA conference, but when you get a chance to view WASDA and just what else is going on in Pierce County and the state, it feels like we are so far ahead of a lot of other districts in so many ways. The testing that's going on right now in our district, thank you, Art, for helping to push that along and for facilitating that. It's just great to see those numbers coming back, and I hope it's very reassuring to our parents and our students to see those numbers coming back where the studies are showing they should be. And I'm hoping that those numbers will help us as we move forward to get things moving a little faster towards some normalcy. And I just want to say thank you to everybody, and let's just keep doing the great work. It's a great board and it's a great district, and I've got a great staff all the way around. Thank you.
Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Congratulations to David and to the year ahead, and a big thank you to Deb as well for your outstanding leadership, but especially for the countless hours that you put in behind the scenes that not everyone sees. We all have some sense, but I know there's hours and hours and hours that go on, I suspect, at your house into the wee hours or in the wee hours of the morning. And I've known you long enough to just know your passion for kids is real, and that you do this because you love the kids. And so it's been a pleasure to serve with you.
Thanks, Lori.
And then just quick, because it's all been said, I just wanted to thank Melissa again for sharing that awesome video from Peninsula with the band and the cheer. And it was clever. It really just highlighted what we always know, but it's always so good to be reminded of just how clever our teachers are in this time, and our students. Our student reps too have been so positive tonight. And that video was just a great reminder. Also, it reminded me of what I missed the most about WASDA being in person is there's outstanding groups and performances by students of all different kinds. And we saw some of that virtually, but there's just so many great things going on in all of our schools to be celebrated. And so I just realized, I think when I watched that video, Melissa, how starved I am for seeing, plays and sporting events and concerts and all the things that our kids can do. So hopefully soon we'll be back to that. I'm also on the Parent District Council with Natalie, and it's my pleasure to serve on that committee and to stay connected with the parents and the group that is there, and also Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. And I would love to report more on that next time we meet. So it's been quite a year to remember, but pleasure working with you all and the amazingly talented staff and teachers, and really to the staff and teachers, I hope everyone has and enjoys a much needed break and refreshes and rejuvenates And here's to 2021.
Okay, so I guess I'll go last. I think, I touched on a couple of things earlier that I got a pleasure of touring Pioneer Elementary and just seeing what a wonderful school that is going to be. And can't wait for us to open that in the new year. Evergreen as well, just coming along so nicely. Attending the Pierce County School District legislative briefing last night just to get hear what some of the ideas are going forward at the state level. It certainly was proud to be able to see Dr. Jarvis speak on national media over the weekend and to have the Peninsula School District represented on the national stage for all the efforts we're doing to keep our staff, students safe and to keep our kids in school, setting the standard for others to follow. I just think very proud. Congratulations to Lori for being elected by her WASDA peers to remain on the WIA committee. Get our kids back in sports, miss, please. Thank you to our student reps for their service on the board. I think there's so many great things going on in the school district that I think the COVID and reopening everything has just drowned out all the amazing things that are also going on in the school district. And as Natalie alluded to, it's been very painful. I think, for Deb and I serving the longest on the board, sometimes we're getting hammered by one side or the other, but this is probably the first time that we've ever gotten hammered at the same time by both sides. But it's been a learning experience. And we just, like we said, there was a old Mac Davis song about seeing Lubbock, Texas in your rearview mirror. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing 2020 in my rearview mirror. I think Deb, Lori, and I can all say that it's been a pleasure having Natalie and Chuck on the school board for 2020. Both of you got definitely trial by fire. And this is one fire that Chuck couldn't put out with the fire hose, but it was definitely a year for you guys to remember. And my 7 years on the board wrapped up into one for you. And you got that all in one year. So, but it's been a pleasure serving with both of you this year and look forward to serving with you in 2021. Congratulations, Lori Glover, on your election to vice president.
I was just busy enjoying listening.
Sorry.
I think I said it earlier. We've got a lot of work.
Okay. Go ahead, Art.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Art. Go ahead.
I was just commenting that as 2020 passes and this is our last board meeting, we have an immense amount of work to do in 2021. And I think we're all honestly looking forward to it and the planning and what's ahead for us. And so my deepest appreciation to you for just being there and hanging in through this fall and making it work for kids. And my pride is immense in the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think everybody said already what I want to say about Deb and dear friend.
That's good. Thank you.
All right. So there is no executive session this evening. So we will adjourn the meeting at 9:14 p.m. You guys all have a great holiday.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.